Chapter 796. A few days later, in the desolate universe belt, the small spaceship carrying Han Shao and the others approached a huge Red Empire fleet. This fleet belonged to the dynasty's border defense army and was called the 36th Army. It was the force responsible for clearing out the fallen Ark and was waiting to meet with the beyond Grade A combatants sent by the dynasty. After checking all the passes and confirming their identities, the small spaceship entered the fleet formation and docked with the coffin-like Guardian-class main ship. The hatch opened, and Han Shao and the others walked into the cabin of the main ship. Several officers were there to welcome them. Your Excellency Black Star, Your Excellency Incineration, Your Excellency Dragon Emperor, I'm the adjutant of Commander Murky. I'm here to welcome you, an officer said respectfully. Although Ames was not an ally of the dynasty, she was a neutral beyond Grade A who came with Han Shao, so the dynasty would not neglect her. Han Shao nodded, and the group followed the adjutant. After walking for a while, they realized that they had entered the living area instead of the bridge command room. The commander won't meet us? Bayoni was confused. The adjutant smiled apologetically and said, The commander wants you to rest first. He'll be in charge of the strategy, so you don't have to worry about it. Han Shao raised his brows. He doesn't want to discuss it with us? The commander is still discussing with the staff officers and can't leave for the time being. He'll inform you when the strategy is perfected, so it's inconvenient to disturb you before that, the adjutant said. The enemy can escape our lock at any time, so it's not suitable for the troops to be on standby for too long. We're about to set off and we'll fight the enemy very soon. Please rest well. We'll need your combat power when the time comes. Hearing this, Han Shao and Bayoni looked at each other and shook their heads. They knew that this Commander Murky did not want them to interfere with the strategy and did not even want to discuss it with them. Let's rest then. It was Han Zhao's first time following the dynasty's army into battle. Since Bayoni did not say anything, he did not have any objections and stayed there according to the other party's arrangement. Seeing that the three beyond Grade as had no objections, the adjutant was visibly relieved. He ordered his subordinates to settle down Han Shao and the others before bidding farewell and returning to the command room on the bridge. Murky, the commander of the 36th Legion of the Border Defense Force, stood in front of the huge star map with his hands behind his back. He looked up and observed. None of the staff officers beside him made a sound. Commander, the three beyond Grade A combatants have been settled, the deputy reported. Murky did not turn around. Do they have a problem with that? No. Yes, that's right. I don't like people who tell me what to do. Murky nodded. Inform the entire army to depart immediately. He was in charge of this routine cleanup. In order to wait for the beyond Grade A combatants sent by the dynasty, his troops have been on standby for a long time. This group of beyond Grade A combatants only arrived after a long time, which Murky did not like. However, the beyond Grade as had a high status and were not part of the dynasty's army, so he could not say anything. He did not have a good impression of the beyond Grade as who were not directly related to the dynasty. As the commander of the fleet, he looked at the problem from a tactical perspective. In his eyes, although these beyond Grade as had a high status, they were nothing more than extremely destructive tools on the battlefield without the halo of the national pillars. Murky did not want these beyond Grade as to interfere too much and take away his command. Since the dynasty had given these tools to him, he would naturally be the one to use them. Therefore, he felt that there was no need to waste his saliva discussing tactics with these beyond Grade as. No matter how high their status was outside, a fleet could only have one commander. These beyond Grade as only needed to follow his orders. He told his adjutant to receive the beyond Grade as because he was too lazy to do so. In fact, he did not even want to see Han Shao and the others step into his command room. Under Murky's order, this fleet moved, turning into a stream of light and traveling through the desolate universe belt, chasing in the direction of the enemy. In the cabin, Han Shao, Ames, and Bayoni gathered and chatted casually. The commander of this fleet seems to dislike us. Ames shook her head. Bayoni did not deny it and said, The dynasty's army places great importance on discipline, and beyond Grade as are not part of the army. They will never obey orders unconditionally. The commander's words do not carry much weight, so some of the dynasty's officers do not like us beyond grade as telling them what to do. After pausing for a while, Baoni said with some dissatisfaction, "Although that's the case, this Muriki guy is too arrogant. He's not even willing to receive us personally and told us to wait for orders obediently. Does he think us national pillars are his soldiers? Beyond grade, as we're all big shots with great power. When had they ever been ignored like this? If it were an outsider, he would have easily crushed them to death if they dared to put on airs in front of him. Unfortunately, this was a dynasty soldier and could not be touched." Baoni was unhappy. Han Xiao, however, did not mind. He waved his hand and said, "He's the commander after all. He has to ensure his own authority. A fleet cannot have a second voice. Although our status is high, there's nothing wrong with him treating us the same. If we casually raised our opinions, it would be difficult for him to deal with it. He might as well make clear his responsibilities from the beginning and not let us interfere in the command." Baoni glanced at him and said, "You really don't think of yourself as a beyond grade A super." Han Xiao shrugged. Some of the older beyond grade as were used to ordering people around because they were superior and did not allow any disobedience or disrespect. Han Zhao's mentality was different. He was not so angry. After all, he was a professional commander and would not be willing to be instructed by an outsider. However, although this was not wrong, Han Xiao also felt that Muriki was indeed arrogant. No matter what, it was not too much to show some respect to someone at the top of the galaxy. It was fine if he did not suck up to him, but if he had to be so arrogant, did he think he was the dynasty's marshal? Shaking his head, Han Xiao did not dwell on this. He would most likely encounter ES God's main body this time, so he needed to think about it. ES God purposely attracted the dynasty's army to test me. Han Xiao thought to himself. ES God had once proposed to help him complete a task unconditionally in exchange for the right to use the evolution cube. He was tempted, but after thinking about it, he realized that he could not jump into this fire pit. This person was very bad. The deal itself was a trap, and ES God's identity was so sensitive. If he really did make the deal, he would be blackmailed. For ES God to be able to survive between the gaps of the three universal civilizations, Han Xiao did not believe that ES God had nothing to do with the three universal civilizations. If he agreed to ES God's request, ES God might kick him to the curb and report this matter to the dynasty. After using the evolution cube, ES God could turn his back on him at any time. He did not have any credibility, and the uncertainty was too great. Even if he fulfilled his promise, ES God had many ways to force him to the opposite side of the Order faction. ES God was not afraid of doing bad things, and it would be too easy for him to drag him down. Han Xiao also had another worry, which was that ES God had stolen the evolution cube from Cisco and exposed the fact that he had the information of the evolutionary civilization. Since he could also use the evolution cube, it would be easy for others to connect the dots and suspect him. The Red Empire did not interrogate him. Perhaps they had secretly investigated him and expressed their trust in him. However, if ES God was ruthless enough to slander him, it would still have some impact. If this dragged on, he would not be able to avoid it forever. ES God was not a dead person, so how could he be willing to be ignored? If he lost his patience, he would definitely do something. At that time, he would not be in the central galaxy, and it would not be easy for him to clear his suspicion. Joining the dynasty would allow him to develop in the long run, so why take the risk? He had thought it through and would not jump into this fire pit. After all, ES God would not let him go. This time, he would become an enemy of ES God. Some people's schemes might look tempting, but they were actually filled with thorns. Your Excellency, ES God, we have detected that the Red Empire's fleet has appeared behind us. According to our current speed, they will catch up to us very soon. Should we increase our speed and shake them off or turn around to face them? In a main ship of the fallen Ark fleet, ES God's doppelganger listened to his subordinate's report and waved his hand. Turn around and face them. He had ordered this fleet to wander around the dynasty's border to lure the dynasty's army out. Naturally, he would not run away. The Fallen Ark fleet had a total of tens of millions of spaceships, and there were many hidden strongholds in the desolate universe belt that had been assembling new spaceships. God had a lot of assets, so he did not feel any heartache about using a fleet as bait. If Black Star did not come, God was prepared to capture some espers during this battle with the dynasty's border defense army. This way, he would not lose his fleet for nothing. This Fallen Ark fleet turned around and faced the dynasty's army, preparing for battle. Not long after, the 36th Army of the dynasty's border defense army appeared on the radar. Although the Fallen Ark fleet was a group of undisciplined thugs, they were not a mob. They immediately opened fire and fired at the dynasty's army. At the same time, the thrusters were at full power, and the entire fleet charged toward the dynasty's army fiercely. The three universal civilizations and God were old rivals. As soon as the two sides met, there was no need for any verbal communication. The two fleets quickly charged toward each other, inserted into each other's formation, and started fighting. Spaceships exploded one after another in the universe, turning into dazzling fireworks that were both beautiful and cruel. On the side of the battlefield, there was a desolate planet. The wreckage of spaceships turned into meteors and landed on the planet, creating craters. The 36th Legion's warrior-class mothership opened fire at full power. Dark red dark energy annihilation rays shot out like they were free, destroying the Fallen Ark combat ships one after another. Murky looked at the 3D battlefield view and saw the entire battle. He stared at the enemy's flagship and said coldly, "Let's take the initiative first. Make the first move. Have the three beyond grade as move together and force God out." The orders sounded in the communication channel. Bayoni frowned and said with a deep voice, "If the three of them attack together, won't we expose our trump card immediately? It's not up to you to question. Carry out my order." Murky heard the reply in the channel and said with a deep voice, full of unquestionable toughness, "Damn, I met a tough guy." Han Shao fell helpless. The Red Empire was good in every way except for this. Their civilization was too strong, giving some of the officials a sense of superiority and confidence. A hint of displeasure flashed through Bayoni's eyes. It was not good to be calculative in battle, so he held it in and jumped out of the cabin door, directly entering the battlefield and charging toward the enemy's flagship where God was. Ames was also a little unhappy. She shook her head and was about to enter the battlefield when Han Shao suddenly stopped her and sighed. "Sorry, I didn't know the commander was like this. Sorry to have made you suffer with me." Hearing this, Ames stopped in her tracks and turned back to look at him. Her eyes shone, and the slight displeasure disappeared, leaving only teasing. "Do you think I'm a child? Do I need your comfort?" Her tone was full of laughter. Then, Ames rose into the air and joined the battlefield, flying toward God from another direction. With a helpless smile, Han Shao followed closely behind. The moment the three of them joined the chaotic battle, the situation of the battle immediately changed. Wherever Bayoni passed, the enemy warships would suddenly burst into flames, emitting multicolored flames. Even the highly heat-resistant armor alloys were ignited on their own, turning into scorching molten steel. The entire warship melted and exploded. Ames directly grabbed countless enemy battleships with her force field and swept them left and right. Dazzling electric arcs exploded when the shields of the battleships collided with each other, leaving a huge gap in the hull and sweeping out countless empty areas. The battleships that were too close were squeezed from the outside to the inside by the force field and exploded. Both of them were good at AoE and were great killing machines on the battlefield. Han Shao did not even need to do anything. He was happy to take the mech legion behind the two of them and only needed to finish off a portion of the mission requirements. The three of them approached the enemy's flagship. Inside the flagship, God's doppelganger looked at Han Shao and became excited. He actually showed up, Buzz. The next moment, his figure disappeared from the spot and appeared in front of the three of them. He did not even look at Ames and Bayoni and locked his eyes on Han Shao. He could not wait to send a private telepathic message with an expectant tone. "Black Star, you really have a tacit understanding with me. Have you decided to make a deal with me?" Bang. Han Shao did not hesitate to focus fire. Countless psionic cannons bombarded God's doppelganger, sending it flying toward the surface of the desolate planet. The three of them followed, closely behind, and hovered in the air of the desolate planet. Ames pulled with her palm and pulled God's doppelganger out. Her force field pressed God's doppelganger into a distorted shadow and dragged it toward the three of them. Baoni aimed his hands at God's doppelganger, and flames suddenly burst out from within the dark body of God's doppelganger. Han Shao put his hands together and activated Gene Liberation. The Mech Legion fired at God's doppelganger that could not move. Chi. Blue light rays pierced through God's doppelganger again and again like a storm, disappearing into the depths of the universe along the gravitational arc of the desolate planet. Ha! God's doppelganger exploded into a cloud of black mist and slowly dissipated. Even Cisco could easily kill two God's doppelganger by himself, facing three beyond grade as an God doppelganger with limited energy could only be destroyed. Not bad. Muraki, who was in the main ship far away, nodded. After destroying God's doppelganger, the only thing left to do was to destroy the enemy's fleet. Just as he was thinking about this, a space energy vortex suddenly appeared where God's doppelganger had disappeared, and an ugly man with a hood stepped out. As soon as this person appeared, he seemed to bring endless pressure, and the surrounding space seemed to freeze for an instant. At this moment, Muraki's expression changed drastically. Baoni's relaxed body tensed up. Ames furrowed her brows. Han Shao narrowed his eyes. It was not a doppelganger, but God's main body. He was a notorious thug that many beyond grade as feared. God stared at Han Shao indifferently and spoke slowly with a cold tone. I'm very disappointed in your answer, but when you rejected me, you shouldn't have been so close to me. Chapter 797. The appearance of God shocked Muraki. He originally thought that this was just a routine cleanup, but he did not expect God's main body to appear here. There was a consensus in the Central Galaxy that if one encountered God's main body, it would be best to escape immediately. However, thinking that he had three beyond grade as under his command, Muraki suppressed his desire to retreat immediately and wanted to fight. You guys stop God and lure him away. By some time, Muraki ordered the fleet to speed up the attack on the Fallen Ark fleet regardless of the losses. On the other hand, he decisively ordered Han Shao and the others. God's ferocity was too deeply rooted in the Central Galaxy. Although Muraki was arrogant, he knew that it was impossible for him to kill God with just as few people. His goal was to destroy the enemy fleet, cut off God's wings, and try to force God's main body back. If he succeeded, it would be a dazzling achievement. Although God was one of the top beyond grade, as he had three people of the same level on his side after all, it was time for him to use them as tools. The dynasty's troops began to move, but in the sky of the desolate planet, Han Zhao's trio and God were facing each other. They turned a deaf ear to Muraki's words and ignored him. The atmosphere was almost frozen, and the murderous intent continued to rise. Baoni did not dare look away from God. He glanced at Han Shao in surprise. God had said it out loud, and he had heard it too. What reply? Black Star and God have private connections? Han Zhao's fingers moved quickly, and the Mech Legion's cannons all aimed at God. However, he did not attack immediately and slowly spoke. Do you really think I'll agree to your conditions and give you the evolution cube? Since I've joined the dynasty, you and I are enemies. The reason I'm here to deal with you is to make you give up. The evolution cube is with me. If you want it, come and snatch it. Han Shao did not hide the fact that the two of them had contacted each other in private and took the initiative to state his stand. God narrowed his eyes and stared at Han Zhao's neck as if he could see through the mechanical suit and see the evolution cube on his neck. Knowing that he was the one who released the signal this time, he actually dared to come and reject him personally. He brought the evolution cube with him just to draw the line. Was he really not afraid that he would steal it? Or was he too confident in his own strength? God glanced at Han Zhao's trio and said indifferently, "Did the three of us give you the confidence?" As soon as he said that, ES God made his move. With a push of his hand, rainbow-like energy gushed out, turning into countless rays of light that shot toward the three of them. Shield. A green light flashed in Aim's eyes, and a thick force field turned into a shield that covered the three of them. Streaks of rainbow energy exploded on the shield, and the penetrative power was extremely strong. It also had the attribute of disintegration. If it were not for Aim's force field, it would have been difficult to block this attack. ES God twisted his palm, and suddenly, another force field descended and squeezed. He also has a force field Esper ability. Ames was shocked and hurriedly supported her own force field. The two force fields, one internal and one external, were in a stalemate for a while. They were the ones who were wrapped in ES God's force field instead. Force field Esper abilities were very common and did not have high potential. Ames was the only one who had cultivated it to beyond grade A, but the low-grade Esper abilities that ES God absorbed would be enhanced by him to beyond grade A, so the two of them were on par. With a thought, the mechanical army outside immediately launched an attack. ES God's eyelids drooped, and the space around him suddenly solidified as though it had turned into a crystal structure. The countless psionic cannons were all deflected. Some of them disappeared into the sky, and some of them exploded on the ground. However, none of them hit ES God's body. Pure energy refraction Esper ability. Han Zhao's expression changed. At this time, Baoni released his ability from afar and ignited ES God's body. Be it his flesh, bones, or energy, they all turned into fuel. However, ES God was not affected at all. He took a deep breath, and the flames on his body seemed to be absorbed by his skin. Baoni's ability turned into pure energy and was devoured by his cells. Before the few of them could react, half of ES God's body suddenly turned into black fog, and the black fog condensed into a human figure. Like cells splitting, a new doppelganger was formed. Swoosh! This doppelganger disappeared instantly, ignoring Ames's force field, and appeared right in front of Baoni. It punched toward his chest and activated his seraphic speed, Esper ability. Baoni's reaction was extremely fast. Energy flowed through his arms, and he raised his hands to block the ES God doppelganger's fist. However, the fist did not have any strength, and the moment it touched Baoni, a strange energy entered Baoni's body. What? Baoni's expression changed drastically. At this moment, he felt as if the Esper ability in his body had disappeared, and he could not even feel his energy. At this time, this ES God doppelganger shone brightly and rapidly expanded. Buzz! A black ball of light was born and rapidly expanded. It was as if a black hole had appeared on the surface of the earth, swallowing Baoni's figure. A portion of the surrounding mech army was swallowed and destroyed. The mechanical soldiers that were not at the center of the explosion hurriedly retreated and were blown away by the shockwave. Boom! The ball of light expanded and exploded, leaving a crater in the ground. A black fireball floated in the air, and the surrounding black flames dissipated, revealing Baoni's figure. He was in a sorry state at this time, and his entire body was charred black. His ability was suppressed by some kind of ES God Esper ability. When the doppelganger exploded, it was not easy for him to sense his Esper ability again. He ignited the energy nearby and blocked most of the power of the explosion, creating a blank space around him. That was why he was not severely injured. Not far away, the space rippled slightly, and Han Xiao walked out. He avoided the explosion through void hyperdrive. On the other side, Ames also walked out of the void dimension. She had used the same method to avoid the center of the explosion as Han Xiao. After a short exchange, the three of them looked up at ES God, who did not move at all. What a terrifying fellow. Although he had expected this, ES God's strength still shocked Han Xiaoxin. Rumors were one thing, but facing ES God in person was another. The main body and doppelganger were two completely different concepts. In front of him was a monster who had spent countless years collecting arcanas, and who knew how many abilities he had. This guy's main body was the true meaning of ES God, the omnipotent god of Esper abilities. The potential of an Esper ability limited the upper limit of the user's grade. Many unique Esper abilities had very low upper limits, but after ES God absorbed these Esper abilities, he used his own beyond grade A attributes as the source of power, allowing many Esper abilities that could not be upgraded to the beyond grade A level. No matter how simple an Esper ability was, it would still be extremely powerful in his hands. For example, the ability to suppress Baoni used a type of Esper ability to silence others. This ability had a very low upper limit and would not even work on calamity grades. However, with ES God's own strength, even beyond grade, as would not be immune to it. With so many Esper abilities, ES God had almost no shortcomings. To him, the two biggest limitations were his own energy limit, and he could not use too many Esper abilities at the same time, which would put a huge burden on his genetic chain. He could suppress 3 people with ease. In the entire universe, there were not many who could be his match in a direct confrontation. Luckily, Baoni is here as well. If there were only 2 beyond grade, as we would be in a very passive position. Although the 3 of us can't beat him, we can at least hold him back. Han Xiaoxin's expression was solemn as he reorganized the scattered mech legion. Compared to the few beyond grade, as he had fought before, ES God was the only one who had overwhelming combat strength. The pressure he gave him was unprecedentedly huge. As expected of the brutes, whose name has spread across the entire galaxy. Ems took a deep breath with a serious expression. This was also her first time fighting ES God, and it was her first time personally experiencing ES God's terrifying combat strength. She was shocked. ES God glanced at the 3 of them and suddenly disappeared in front of them with a teleport. Not good. Han Xiao raised his head, and his expression changed. ES God had suddenly moved into the middle of the dynasty's fleet. Muraki, who was commanding the fleet, also had the same thought. When he saw ES God appear in the fleet, his expression changed drastically. The next moment, ES God punched out, and a black and red beam of light shot toward the Guardian-grade flagship. It instantly penetrated the high-energy shield of the flagship and created a huge hole in the hull. The hole penetrated from the front to the back, and armor fragments flew everywhere. Warning, warning. Hull damaged by 8%. Engine number 3 damaged. Energy transmission circuit damaged. Energy core output efficiency reduced by 18%. Repairing. The vibration of the hull caused the people in the command room to stagger and almost fall to the ground. Muraki finally stabilized himself, but he was already shocked. Retreat quickly. The main ship was attacked, and the situation had suddenly changed. If ES God hit him a few more times, he would be dead for sure. The unwillingness in Muraki's heart disappeared instantly, and he did not dare fight anymore. However, ES God's target was the main ship, and he shot out a series of black and red light beams. Looking at the attack approaching from the porthole and listening to the alarm of the spaceship, Muraki suddenly realized that he was powerless in front of such power. The fleet he trusted could not save him at all. He was like a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. A look of despair appeared on his face. The light beam shot into the main ship. The next moment, the interior of the ship expanded, and the main ship exploded. Muraki's vision turned black, and he closed his eyes to wait for death. Suddenly, he felt cold metal wrap around his body. He opened his eyes immediately and saw the explosion of the main ship getting further and further away. He was covered by a mechanical suit and was quickly moving away from the explosion area. I'm not dead. Muraki's eyes were wide open, and his heart was still palpitating. At this time, the tactical screen lit up, and Han Zhao's face appeared. You're still alive? Don't just stand there. The fleet needs your command. Don't think about retreating. Although ES God is terrifyingly strong, he won't be able to defeat 3 beyond grade as in a short time. This place is very close to the dynasty's border, and the border guard army can come and help at any time. He won't stay here for too long. As long as we hold on, we can force him to retreat. When a main ship exploded, Han Xiao had arrived and saved Murky. This guy cannot die yet. The fleet needed a command. Black Star? This guy saved me? Murky's expression changed. After hearing Han Zhao's words, he clenched his teeth and gave up on the idea of retreating. He hurriedly opened the command channel and ordered the fleet to continue attacking. The mechanical suit on his body protected him from being decapitated. Han Xiao led the two of them to surround Es God again, using all their strength to drag him away from the battlefield of the fleet. The four of them fought fiercely. Es God dealt with the attacks of the three of them without showing any signs of difficulty. Instead, the wounds on Han Zhao's group kept increasing, and the casualties of the Mech Legion also gradually increased. They were not Es God's match one-on-one, so they could only cooperate with each other. It felt like three heroes fighting against Lu Bu. In the midst of the fierce battle, Han Xiao suddenly received a telepathic message from Es God. I've always been curious. How did you know how to use the evolution cube? Es God's tone was curious. He was truly confused. The information of the evolutionary civilization was clearly in his hands. He had checked Han Zhao's background, and he had never interacted with the evolutionary civilization before this. How did he know how to use the evolution cube? Han Xiao blocked an energy blast from an unknown Esper ability with his psionic shield. His whole body stiffened, and he clenched his teeth and barely opened his mouth. I was lucky. Lucky? Do you think I'm that easy to fool? Es God had a look of disbelief. The password to open the evolution cube is so complicated. If you were to rely on luck, the probability is infinitely close to zero. Who are you trying to fool? There is only one possibility. The information of the evolutionary civilization must have been leaked from somewhere. After pausing for a while, Es God dodged a force field attack from Ames and suddenly shook his head. Forget it. The main point is that you know how to use it. The reason doesn't matter. This might have given you confidence, but it's a pity that you underestimated me and overestimated yourself. Bringing the portable evolution cube to me is your biggest mistake. This time, Es God raised his palm, and a blue light ball floated in his palm. The next moment, the light ball suddenly disappeared and turned into a familiar silver cube. Han Zhao's body trembled, and he hurriedly looked down. The evolution cube on his neck had disappeared, and there was no sound at all when it disappeared. Chapter 798. A Space Displacement Esper Ability. Han Xiao narrowed his eyes. You don't seem nervous at all. Es God narrowed his eyes and suddenly realized something. His fingers exerted force and crushed the small silver cube. He loosened his grip, and the silver alloy fragments scattered out of his palm. There was no evolution energy at all. Seeing this, Es God froze. Han Xiao chuckled. You don't think that I would really bring the evolution cube to see you personally, do you? I'll return your words to you. Aren't you underestimating me too much? This guy was not like Cisco, who had occupied the cube for many years and almost refined it into a magic weapon. Es God did not have the psychic senses of the cube to immediately check if it was real or not. Es God was silent for a few seconds before shaking his head. That's right. Since you've decided to reject me, how could you bring the real thing over? I was misled by you. When his main body had first appeared, Han Xiao had acted very tough and said that if he wanted the evolution cube, he could come and snatch it. This attracted Es God's attention to the evolution cube on him. Coupled with the fact that both sides had started fighting, Es God had no time to think and subconsciously thought that Han Xiao had the real thing. Es God had just said that he was not easy to fool, but he had not expected to be tricked so quickly. It was not a secret that the evolution cube had become portable. With Cisco eyeing it, it was impossible for him to hand it over to someone else for safekeeping. Han Xiao had always created this illusion, making others think that the evolution cube was always with him. Therefore, in Es God's eyes, locking onto Han Zhao's whereabouts was equivalent to locking onto the location of the evolution cube. Because of his first impression, he had fallen into the wrong mindset and did not immediately consider the possibility of the evolution cube leaving Han Xiao. The information left behind by the evolutionary civilization recorded the method to locate the evolution cube. However, it was different from Cisco's psychic senses. This method was a special detection device that was compatible with the cube and could only accurately locate it within a certain range of the evolution cube. The technology of the cube detector came from countless years ago and had certain flaws compared to today. Furthermore, the technology left behind by the evolutionary civilization was not complete. The detector had limitations, mainly in its range. The principle was to receive a certain special energy waveband emitted by the evolution cube, and this waveband required time to spread across the universe. Like a ripple, it would become weaker the further away it was, which made it impossible for the detector to locate it from an infinite distance. In the past, when God stole the evolution cube, he first knew that the evolution cube was on Cisco's mother planet. After knowing the approximate location, he went to the vicinity and used detection devices to avoid Cisco's psychic shield to obtain the precise location of the evolution cube on his mother planet. Only then could God's doppelganger use his teleportation Esper ability to avoid the star pupil Protoss guards and sneak in. If it did not know where the cube was at the beginning, the detection device would not have been able to find a needle in a haystack and find the target across the vast star field. The detection device was an external device, unlike Cisco's, which was an innate ability. God was prejudiced, and he was held back by the three of them, so he did not check the device. Otherwise, he would have noticed the anomaly. The detection device did not detect the evolution cube at all. Cisco's psychic energy was connected to the evolution cube. Although the location was too far away, it was an infinite distance. This was why Han Shao usually brought the evolution cube with him. With a beyond grade, and like him protecting him, it was the safest. However, it was different this time. Knowing that God had many tricks up his sleeves, Han Shao could not be unprepared. The evolution cube was really not with him now. Not long ago, he had set off from planet Crimson Ring and spent a few days to reach the border. Along the way, Han Shao had secretly released a spaceship and split up. He did not come to the border, but stealthily moved through the dynasty's territory alone. The real evolution cube was placed inside the spaceship, and he did not reveal this to anyone. Cisco was far away, and the further away he was, the less accurate his senses were. He only knew that the evolution cube was in the general direction of the central galaxy. Not to mention that he did not know what was going on here. Even if he knew that the evolution cube was separated from Han Shao, a famous person from the Arcane Church would not be able to enter the dynasty's territory. Thus, the threat from Cisco could be ignored for the time being. To be on the safe side, another mechanical army was stationed in the stealth spaceship that was keeping the evolution cube. Because of the Emperor Mechanic's ability, quantum infinite distance transmission channel. Even if the Mech Legion was very far away from Han Shao, they could still transmit mechanical force over a large area, allowing the distant Mech Legion to have the strength of a beyond grade A. Staying in one place and allowing the beyond grade A Mech Legion to go on an expedition was the specialty and strength of a beyond grade A mechanic, the super kiting style. If they were not even present, how would the enemy get close to them? This was similar to God's doppelganger, or even better. The Mecha Empire's Manison fought in this way. When fighting him, one would not even be able to see his shadow. Han Shao did not use this tactic at the moment because the foundation of his army could not reach the level of the Mecha Empire. Furthermore, his tankiness was his trump card, and it would be a waste if he did not use it. However, the Mech Legion that he sent out also had the strength to crush calamity grades and could temporarily act as the guards for the evolution cube. Various thoughts flashed through his mind, but Han Shao did not stop. He controlled the Mech Legion to focus fire. Although God's energy deflection shield could block most of the energy attacks, Han Shao had ways to deal with them. The Mech Legion had many ways of attacking, and it was impossible for a beyond grade A to be helpless with just one Esper ability. His Mech Legion could even counter the Metal Control Esper ability, so a mere energy deflection Esper ability would not be a problem for him. Furthermore, God could not use too many abilities at the same time, so it was impossible for him to only defend and not attack. Furthermore, there were two other beyond grade as holding him back. 1 against 3 was not enough to deal with ES God, but at the same time, ES God could not easily defeat the 3 of them. It was impossible to determine the victor in a short time, and both sides were in a stalemate. On the battlefield, Muraki, who had just escaped, did not have time to relax. He commanded the fleet to attack. Although he was arrogant, being able to command a border guard army alone showed that his professional abilities were not for show. Under his tactical command, the dynasty's fleet attacked crazily and steadily gained the upper hand, swallowing the enemy fleet in large mouthfuls. Without the intervention of a beyond grade A, this fallen arc fleet was not his match at all and was quickly wiped out. ES God frowned as he looked at the battlefield. He could see that this fleet was most likely going to be wiped out. He had just confirmed that the evolution cube was not with Han Shao, so there was no need for ES God to continue fighting this battle. This place was too close to the dynasty's border, and reinforcements would arrive soon. Even he did not want to face the dynasty's border guard army. Even if he could escape unscathed, he did not want to provoke the 3 universal civilizations. If he killed too many of the Red Empire's troops, the Red Empire would most likely gather an army to enter this sensitive area and launch a hunt for his fallen arc fleet. By then, the ones who would come would be Claudi and the other 2 old ruffians. Although ES God was not afraid of them, he would lose far more than just this fleet, so it was not worth it. At this time, Han Shao suddenly spoke in their telepathic connection. You have a space displacement ability. You never planned to trade with me in the first place. It was just a trap, wasn't it? ES God raised his hand to block Aim's force field. Hearing this, he said with a playful tone, I indeed don't have any credibility, but you guessed wrong this time. I was actually full of sincerity. Originally, the evolution cube was the only hope to reach a higher level in my eyes, but it is not now. I have seen a broader, new world. To me now, the evolution cube is no longer my final goal. It is just a tool that I want, not something that I can't live without. If you're willing to lend it to me, I really won't do anything to you. A higher level? Han Xiaoxin's heart skipped a beat. ES God had fused a super high-risk Esper ability and accepted countless galactic fugitives to form the fallen Arkansas. Everything he did was for greater strength. His motive was very pure. You want to imitate the primordial ones, break through the limits of individual strength, and discover a new realm? Han Shao narrowed his eyes. ES God did not comment. Suddenly, he changed the topic and said, Speaking of which, I still have to thank you. You let me see new hope and change my goal. Thank me? Han Shao was confused. A few years ago, my doppelganger fought with you in the Shattered Star Ring and was played by you before being thrown into the wormhole, ES God said with a strange tone. Unfortunately, you did not go through the wormhole with me. You have no idea what you missed. The meaning behind his words was like a blessing in disguise. Han Shao was stunned. Suddenly, he had a flash of inspiration and connected all the clues together. Could it be that your people went against Hereful because of this? Back then, the Dark Star leader had come back to assassinate him and used the ES God doppelganger. That was also the first time he had crossed paths with ES God. At that time, he was not a match for the ES God doppelganger. Using the surrounding wormhole environment, he cooperated with a mechanic who studied wormholes, Hereful, to lure the ES God doppelganger into the wormhole and banish it. After that, ES God sent his subordinates to steal the evolution cube, but killed Hereful along the way. Han Shao had never been clear about the reason. This matter had been over for a long time, and he did not expect ES God to bring it up. There seemed to be more to it. Hereful. ES God paused and seemed to think for a while before remembering this name. Oh, that's right, that's the name. He's the guy who tricked my doppelganger with you. I got the data of that wormhole from him. Han Shao was shocked. ES God said that he saw hope. What did this guy see on the other side of the wormhole? ES God got the data of that wormhole teleportation. Could it be that he wanted to locate the location of that random teleportation and build a stable channel? What kind of place did that wormhole lead to that was worth ES God making such a big fuss about it? Han Xiaoxin was itching, but God did not have the interest to continue talking. He suddenly teleported and left the three of them. With a wave of his hand, a teleportation gate opened behind him. From far away, God's gaze stabbed at Han Xiao like a knife. From his eyes, Han Xiao understood what God meant. I'll let you go this time. We'll play slowly in the future. Their gazes collided, opposing each other harshly. Then God took a step back and disappeared with the teleportation gate. He retreated. Han Xiao heaved a sigh of relief. Floating in the air, his expression changed. The Mech Legion lost their target and stopped moving. Since he could not get the evolution cube this time, God was probably going to go back and slowly plan for it. He did not know what kind of methods he would use to deal with him in the future. The two of them had completely turned against each other this time, but this guy could not leave the central galaxy easily. He did not know when the next time they fought would be. Also, the wormhole that God mentioned also piqued his curiosity. Thinking about the strength that God had displayed in this battle, Han Xiao could not help but feel heavy, and the pressure on him increased. As expected of the final boss of the chaotic evil faction, I'm still not strong enough to deal with him. Han Xiaoxin felt a sense of urgency. He still needed to increase his strength. Chapter 799. The strongest big boss in the heavens is just that ruthless. Cutting the pig's feet at the beginning is very exciting. If you're interested, you could take a look. A main character without a penis. You are worth having. The strongest big boss in the heavens. Author. 7 Fleas Introduction. Chu Yi opened his eyes and found himself lying in the cleansing room. An old eunuch was holding a knife and pointing it at his crotch, gesturing at his crotch area. Invincibility starts from being a villain. Author. Lao Xing Introduction. Even if I, Zhao Shanhe, jump down from here, I will definitely be a good person in this life. Ding. Lying is a basic skill of a villain. Level of vile nature. Low. Reward. Villain points plus 10,000. Now what did I say just now? Carrying the villain system and being reborn into the body of a good-for-nothing, Zhao Shanhe began his journey in the world of ancient martial arts and technology. Since there is no good reward for being a good person in this world, then let me be the villain. Nicholas Zhao Ritian. Super Godly Mechanic latest chapter address. Super Godly Mechanic reading address. /10098 / Super Godly Mechanic TXT download address. Super Godly Mechanic mobile reading address. /10098 / in order to facilitate your next reading, you can click on the bookmark below to record this reading record. You will be able to see it the next time you open the bookshelf. If you like Super Godly Mechanic, please recommend this book to your friends, QQ, blog, WeChat, etc. Thank you for your support. Chapter 800. After being on guard for a while, God did not appear again. We forced him to retreat. Bayoni's voice sounded in the communication channel. His tone was full of doubt, as if he could not believe it. Ames looked at the one-sided battle in the distance and shook her head. He doesn't even want the fleet anymore. They're all wanted criminals, not good people. Han Xiao slowly said, in every corner of the universe, new criminals are born every second. Countless people come to seek his protection. How much would God care about the lives of his subordinates? If he did, he wouldn't have used his subordinates as bait. Without God, this fallen Ark fleet fled in all directions and was chased by the dynasty's troops. The chase was left to the dynasty's troops, so the three of them did not attack these battleships and flew back to his secondary ship. The main ship was blown up by God, so Muraki moved to this secondary ship to command. As soon as the three of them entered the spaceship, they met a few soldiers who had been waiting by the cabin door. Your Excellencies, the commander invites the three of you to the bridge. The soldiers were a little nervous. These soldiers on the spaceship had all seen the battle between the three of them and God's main body, so they had a deep understanding of the strength of the three of them. This guy is willing to let us go to the command room now. Han Xiao laughed and walked in front. The soldiers quickly followed and led the way. The three of them passed through many passages and walked into the command room of the bridge. Muraki was staring at the tactical map and continuously giving orders to maximize the results of the battle. He turned around and saw Han Xiao and the other two walking in. His face turned serious, and he hurriedly walked in front of the three of them. "Your Excellency Blackstar, my life was saved by you. Thank you. What happened before was my fault. I'm very sorry." Muraki bowed with a serious face. His attitude was completely different from his arrogant attitude before. He could not be more respectful. After being saved by Blackstar, no matter how arrogant he would not put on airs in front of his savior. Han Xiao narrowed his eyes and looked at him, but he didn't take advantage of the situation and said lightly, "You are a commander. You can be arrogant, you can put on airs, you can have all kinds of problems, but you can't leave your post without permission. The battle is not over yet, and you left your job to come here and apologize to us? To put it bluntly, no matter what your attitude is, it won't change the difference in status between us. Do you think we care about your apology?" The command room fell silent. The faces of the surrounding personnel changed, and they kept quiet out of fear. Muraki was shocked. He wanted to apologize sincerely, but he did not expect to hear such a straightforward answer. It was almost humiliating. He could not help but feel wronged. With an awkward expression, he braced himself and backed away. He did not dare to say anything else and returned to his post to continue commanding the battle. Han Xiao was expressionless as he turned around and left. Only then did the people in the room dare to take a deep breath. Seeing this, the depression in Bayoni's heart disappeared. He followed beside, patted Han Xiao's shoulder, and laughed. This kind of dynasty officer doesn't know how to respect the strong just because of his status. He should be taught a lesson like this. Han Xiao glanced at him and shook his head. He was not angry at Muraki's attitude. If he was alone, he would have just smiled and let it go. However, this was not his problem alone. Ames was not an ally of the dynasty. She was kind enough to help him, but she was treated like this. He could not pretend that nothing had happened. Therefore, even if Muraki took the initiative to raise his butt, he would still slap him away and take the opportunity to teach this guy a lesson. He would trample Muraki's face and sense of superiority into the mud. Ames was not an ally of the dynasty, so she had no right to speak like this. Only he could stand up for her. Even if she did not ask for it, Han Xiao would still do it. Ames sized Han Xiao up with interest. "Yo, this is the first time I've seen you putting on airs as a beyond grade. Kid, you've finally become arrogant?" Han Xiao glanced at her, raised his brows, and said, "Don't tell me you don't like it. You're smart." Ames shook her head and laughed. She stretched out her slender fingers, poked Han Xiao's cheek, and pushed it lightly. "You can talk, but don't touch me." Han Xiao helplessly tilted his head, grabbed Ames's hand, and pressed it down. While casually chatting about the battle earlier, the few of them returned to the house. Han Xiao walked into a room alone and closed the door. Only then did he have time to catch his breath and think about it. He felt that he had gained quite a lot from this test. On the surface, the purpose of participating in the routine cleanup was to complete the mission and earn contribution points, as well as to make his stance clear and draw a line with ES God. His secret goal was to test the combat strength of ES God's main body. Han Technician was full of confidence. He had hidden the evolution cube in advance because he did not think that he was ES God's match. However, since they were both beyond grade as, he would not be too scared. He still had the qualifications to fight ES God. Since he was going to be ES God's enemy, Han Xiao took the initiative to test ES God's strength while he had helpers around him. He wanted to personally feel the difference in strength between ES God and himself so that he would not be caught off guard in the future. The result of the test was out. The feeling that ES God gave him was as unfathomable as the vast ocean. Today, he had only revealed a drop in the ocean, which gave him a lot of pressure. Level, talents, and ultimate knowledges have to keep up. The Mech Legion has to continue expanding as well. Han Xiaoxing pondered. The reason why a beyond-grade mechanics army could go on expeditions, other than their own strength, was to increase the size and foundation of their mechanical army. After obtaining the ultimate knowledges and activating King's Mentor, he would be able to properly nurture the Mech Legion and bring the style of a beyond-grade aim mechanic to greater heights. The first reason why he came into contact with ES God personally was to give him an eye. ES God had many abilities, but he was not a mage after all. Even if there was a very small chance, he still had to give a try. Han Xiao had the mentality of trying and secretly threw an observer's mark on ES God during the battle. Unfortunately, ES God was indeed able to discover the observer's mark, and it was destroyed with a slap. Han Xiao did not feel too regretful about this. It was a gamble in the first place. If it succeeded, it would be a surprise, but if it did not, he was mentally prepared. Dinger! At this time, a mission completion notification popped up on the interface. Han Xiaoxin's heart skipped a beat. The battle is finally over. He opened the interface and looked at the notification. Dynasty Battle Campaign. Fallen Arc. Repeatable. Completed. You have completed the following objectives. Elite Pawn. Fierce General. Scavenger. Directly confronting ES God I. Directly confronting ES God 2. Directly confronting ES God 3. Directly confronting ES God 4. Mission rating. Unbelievable. You have received unbelievable mission rating reward. Extra 900000 experience. 2 random rewards. That's quite a lot of experience. Han Xiaoxin was overjoyed. Missions that involved beyond grade, as always, had extremely generous experience rewards. It was the same for dealing with Heber previously. The total experience reward for this mission was close to 30 billion. Even at his level, it was considered quite a lot. The main reason was that the rewards related to ES God took up the most. With his strength, he could complete them easily, but it was extremely difficult for the players. Glancing at the notification, Han Zhao's lips curled up. This time, he had earned a lot. The Red Empire contribution points had reached over 8,000, which was enough to exchange for an ultimate knowledge. The 2 random rewards were stored by Han Xiao. He then looked at the introduction of the ES God character summon card that was rewarded with directly confronting ES God 4. Character summon card, ES God. Esper ability. Esper silence suppresses the target's Esper genes through close contact, causing them to be unable to use their Esper abilities. Requires the target to be an Esper to take effect. The success rate and duration of the control depends on the difference in level, energy level, and luck. If effective, the minimum duration is 0. 25 seconds. Usage limit 0/2. Esper silence. Han Zhao's eyes widened. This was the Esper ability that ES God had used on Baoni. ES God had many Esper abilities, and the character summon card only gave him one of them. Obtaining this Esper ability would be of great help to him. Touching Fu Ding before the battle was not in vain. Han Xiao pondered. The ability of this character summon card just happened to counter ES God, which was a pleasant surprise. However, the difference between him and ES God was too great, so it was almost impossible for him to succeed. Maybe when his level caught up to ES God in the future, this character summon card would be of use to ES God. Han Zhao's eyes hardened, and he kept this character summon card as a trump card. I've drawn a clear line between ES God and myself, which can be considered to have removed a portion of the hidden dangers. My purpose for coming this time has been achieved. Now, I can exchange for ultimate knowledges, then meet up with the army and contact the Constellation Corridor players. With one of the 2 goals of coming to the Central Galaxy completed, Han Xiao planned his next itinerary in the Central Galaxy. By the way, there's one more thing Han Xiao thought about it. He was a little interested in the wormhole that ES God had mentioned and wanted to know what ES God was planning. When I return to the Shattered Star Ring, I'll find time to visit Heriful's civilization and see if I can get the data of that wormhole. I have to find out why ES God is looking for that set of data. Sadly, that guy was killed by ES God subordinates. Han Zhao's eyes sparkled. He had a feeling that this matter was not simple, and it might give him a pleasant surprise. In another room, Baoni turned on his communicator and dialed Claudi's number. Very soon, the call went through. Claudi, the battle on my side is over. How's the situation? Claudi asked coldly. We encountered ES God's main body. Baoni described the process. Claudi frowned, but after listening, his brows relaxed again. He nodded and said, "It seems that God did contact Blackstar, but Blackstar did not agree. We can't rule out the possibility that they're acting. Anyway, you've worked hard. I'll report the situation to Her Excellency." "It doesn't look like acting." Baoni spoke up for Han Shao. "I feel that Blackstar knows that the dynasty is secretly suspicious of him. So he's purposely making a public statement so that the dynasty can rest assured of him. After all, he's a beyond grade A ally who has just joined. Even if they're suspicious, they won't make it public, so it's impossible for them to send someone to interrogate him. That's why he has to do this." Claudia did not comment. He was only responsible for reporting, and the final judgment was Urinril's job. "By the way, Blackstar also asked me about the Mecha Empire." Baoni recalled. "There's nothing strange about that." Claudia shook his head. After saying a few more words, Baoni hung up the communication and exhaled a mouthful of sparks. Not only was he close to the military's youth faction, but he was also the ruler's trusted aide. Apart from the intention of befriending Han Shao, he had also secretly received orders from Urinril to keep an eye on Blackstar's movements. In the desolate universe belt of the central galaxy, far away from the battlefield, another Fallen Ark fleet was hidden. Above the fleet, a space vortex-like teleportation gate appeared, and God walked out. The main ship opened the hatch and welcomed God. Back in the main hall of the main ship, the people on standby stood up sparsely, their voices rising one after another. "Your Excellency, God." "Boss." God ignored them and walked to the front of the throne. He pulled up his hood, turned around, and sat down. He looked at the people below and slowly spoke. "How's the research progress at the Research Consortium?" "They're still matching the coordinate data. I don't know how long it will take to accurately locate the location recorded in the data. That set of data is too strange, and it doesn't seem to be in the explored universe. Even if we have the data, without a matching target on the star map, the workload is still too huge. I just want results. Confirm the location as soon as possible." God's tone was calm. He turned to look at his right-hand man and said, "Help me contact the people from the Arcane Church." "Oh, why are you looking for them?" The man licked his lips. His purple tongue was like a long whip covered with barbs. A bright red mask was embedded in his facial bones, as if it had been branded with a soldering iron. It covered the upper half of his face, and even his eyes were not visible. Only his mouth and chin were exposed. He was a creature with an upright spine and was not human. He was about 1.7 meters tall, and his back was bent like an old man. He had thick skin, dark purple skin, and his skin was as rough as sandpaper. He had 2 pairs of upper limbs and 1 pair of lower limbs. He was as thin as a match, and his limbs were like purple withered branches. He was wearing the same trendy beggar's hood as God, and his entire person gave off an evil and sinister aura. Hakizan, nicknamed Purple Nightmare, was one of the beyond grade A seeds of the Central Galaxy many years ago. He was once a wanted criminal who was chased by a universal civilization. Later on, he joined the Fallen Ark and had been an important officer under God for hundreds of years. "Tell the people from the Arcane Church that they want the data left behind by the evolutionary civilization. We can give it to them. What's the condition?" Hakizan tilted his head. "Work together to snatch the evolution cube. Tell them that if they succeed, the evolution cube will be theirs. I only need to use it a few times and will not snatch it from them," God said slowly. After suffering a loss once, in order not to repeat the same mistake, he decided to borrow Cisco's ability to sense the evolution cube. As he had slaughtered the star pupil Protoss before, Cisco would not work with him. Therefore, God planned to negotiate with the Arcane Church in secret. As long as the Arcane Church said something, he could borrow Cisco's ability secretly. The Arcane Church had an unusual passion for the evolution cube. Ever since God stole the cube from Cisco and let others know that he had the data of the evolutionary civilization, the Arcane Church had secretly proposed many conditions to him, intending to exchange for the data of the evolutionary civilization. According to God's guess, the Arcane Church's fanatical worship of gods was probably an important reason for them to pursue the evolution cube. However, He did not know the exact details. Although God knew that he was the public enemy of the three universal civilizations, since both sides had the same goal, it was not impossible for them to work together in secret. Furthermore, the target of a negotiation was the mysterious arcane church, which was the most difficult to judge among the three universal civilizations. Compared to the Radiant Federation and the Red Empire, the arcane church's killing intent toward him was the least. We're going to make a deal with the arcane church? How risky? If there's a chance, they might even get rid of you, Hakazin said with a playful tone. Huh. God smiled faintly and did not answer. He slowly said, I'll leave this matter to you. I need to sleep for a while. Pa. Fakizin flicked his tongue like a whip in the air. It was the same as snapping one's fingers, indicating that there was no problem. God nodded, lowered his head, and covered his face with his hood. His face turned into a whirlpool-like black fog again, entering a deep sleep state. Hakazin was not surprised by this. God's many Esper abilities existed in his body in the form of genetic chains, which placed a huge burden on his body. Constantly switching between different Esper abilities would cause his cells to age very quickly. In other words, God's ability to absorb other people's Esper abilities was actually exchanging his lifespan for strength. God's cell activity had already entered the decline stage, and his lifespan had reached old age. However, he had the Esper ability to suppress aging and temporarily recover his youth, which needed to be triggered through deep sleep. This was why he often slept. Generally speaking, after an intense battle, God would take the initiative to sleep. Black Star, Hakazin clicked his tongue. He knew that God had gone to negotiate with Black Star this time, but the negotiation obviously did not go well. Furthermore, he was defeated by Black Star. He was a little interested in this person. After cleaning up the battlefield, Muraki's army returned to the border garrison base, and Han Shao and the others followed. There were millions of border garrison bases in the entire dynasty, scattered across the vast border. The highest officer in charge of garrison base was a lieutenant colonel. After the battle ended, they bid farewell to the highest officer of the base and left. Han Shao and Bayoni agreed to meet again when they had time. They then parted ways. Bayoni left alone, and Han Shao took Ames and the others to a spaceship, heading toward the location where the Black Star Corps had set up their division. On the way, they took a long detour, and Han Shao retrieved the evolution cube and the other mechanical army. He only felt much more at ease when he had the items back on him. As the army's mobile base had not arrived yet, they were not in a hurry, so Han Shao slowed down. This was the first time Hela and the others had come to the Central Galaxy. They walked and stopped along the way, occasionally visiting the colonial planets of the Red Empire. Within the Constellation Corridor, with Han Zhao's identity, they could go anywhere without any obstructions. Han Shao had been paying attention to the Constellation Corridor section of the players' forums along the way, paying attention to the players' feedback. Ever since he had revealed to the Shattered Star Ring that he was coming to the Constellation Corridor half a month ago, the players had been in a state of excitement and anticipation, hoping that the Black Star Corps would cross the star field and come into contact with them. The Central Galaxy's transportation was convenient. When Han Shao was still halfway there, the army that had split up finally arrived at their destination and descended among the players. Han Shao had not arrived personally, but from the Constellation Corridor section of the forums, he could feel the huge impact of the army crossing servers. The passion of the players had exploded. P.S. This chapter is already 5,000 words long. Every time it's mating season, I feel that the days pass by really quickly. Floating and sinking, it's a new month. I'm begging for a guaranteed monthly ticket for my brothers. Chapter 801. Galaxy had already gone through 2 versions, and every star field was like an independent server with different main storyline events. The players' experiences and encounters were different, and they worked for different civilizations and met different people. Although the events in the various star fields were different, the general trend of the versions was the same. In version 1.0, the players were born on the novice planet and experienced events on the planet. In version 2.0, they experienced the turmoil of the novice planet and received the guidance of different factions, officially stepping into the universe and adventuring within the star systems. In version 3.0, the stage of the players gradually expanded to the star cluster they were in and went deeper into the universe. The professional clubs of the various countries chose different star fields as their headquarters to make it easier to obtain resources, thus attracting the normal players within the country. The Constellation Corridor was mainly the home ground of the professional players from Russia and Australia, and there were also some clubs from smaller countries. Of course, the normal players were not limited to this. They could choose any star field to start in, and even the Shattered Star Ring had many international friends. The Constellation Corridor also had players from various countries. The players there had experienced the rebellion on the novice planet Sodrian. This planet was originally a remote fief of a star system civilization, and due to historical factors, it had been an autonomous region for a long time. The ruler of the planet had his own army, and because this person was involved in a sensitive matter, he was suppressed by the star system civilization in version 2.0. The ruler of Sodrian was not willing to give up and openly resisted. In the middle and late stages of version 2.0, the rebellion was suppressed, and the civilization reclaimed Sodrian. The ruler led his fleet and escaped. Due to the intervention of external forces, the players entered the galaxy. Unlike the Black Star Core in the Shattered Star Ring, the players of the Constellation Corridor went their separate ways. Some were recruited by the star system civilizations, some escaped with Sodrian, and some became free people and traveled the universe. The various civilizations scattered in the surrounding star systems were divided into many factions, completely different from the situation in the Shattered Star Ring. In version 3.0, because the Constellation Corridor was the headquarters of the Red Empire, almost all the civilizations were controlled by the Red Empire, and they did not dare to cause trouble. Therefore, unlike the star fields outside the central galaxy, there were very few conflicts between civilizations. A few months after the start of the version, the Secret War main storyline in the Shattered Star Ring had already been completed. The players of the Constellation Corridor had only just triggered the main storyline and had just gotten online with a star cluster civilization. It was precisely because of the large number of factions and good security that the players here sought for their own entertainment and advocated PvP. This led to frequent guild wars, snatching resources and territory from each other. Because Russia and Australia coexisted here, ordinary players from both sides took the initiative to treat each other as an opposing faction. They fought each other merrily, and it was very lively. For the convenience of communication, the players would always tacitly allow the existence of public areas, forming a group effect. The largest safe area recognized by the players of the Constellation Corridor was a trading planet called Gilman in the initial star cluster. It was extremely prosperous and was also a Stargate transit station, so it was convenient to travel. Many players set up stalls and requested to form parties there, treating it as a public area. The Black Star Core Division was located on planet Gilman. This day, as usual, many players took galactic flights to planet Gilman from other places and queued up at the spaceport of the planet. The spaceship queue extended out like a river of light, and it was quite crowded. The vice president of the Strength and Glory Guild, Vodka, and many other guild members were in one of the spaceships. This guild was the official guild under the most famous club in Russia, and their goal was to provide resources for the club's glory team. However, some of the Chinese players preferred to call them the White Emperor's Sacred Sword Team. Vodka had brought people to do missions in other civilizations and collected a batch of equipment. This time, he returned to planet Gilman to rest and store this batch of equipment in the guild base's warehouse on planet Gilman. A guild officer walked into the room and reported to Vodka, "The captain has sent a notice saying that there's a problem with the identity check of the fleet ahead. We'll have to queue for about 10 minutes before we can enter." "Thank you." Vodka nodded. Everyone was not surprised. They opened the interface and browsed the forums while waiting. Vodka did the same. He browsed the forums and saw many posts about the Black Star Core. He shook his head and could not help but say, "The Black Star Corps has been talked about for half a month. I wonder if they're really going to open a division in the Constellation Corridor." Hearing this, the crowd began to talk. "We can't even get in touch with the Red Empire now. Who knows if the Black Star Corps have arrived? They've been received by the Empire ruler, and their level is so high. We probably won't meet them." "That's right. Even if they're going to open a division, we might not even meet them. Who knows where they'll appear?" Currently, the Constellation Corridor players had not joined the Red Empire yet, and Han Shao did not bring any players over. The Black Star Corps came directly from the mother planet of the super-large Stargate Empire, and there were no witnesses. Due to the lack of information, the Constellation Corridor players had no way of knowing what the Black Star Corps was doing. Just as everyone was chatting, someone casually glanced out of the porthole, and his face suddenly froze. He turned around and stared out of the window with a shocked expression. "What's that?" Everyone was stunned. They all looked over and were equally stunned. They saw a fleet escorting a huge mobile satellite base out of the Stargate not far away and slowly approaching Planet Gilman. Not only Vodka and the others, but all the players and galactic residents lining up outside the spaceport saw this scene. On the hull of the fleet, the logo of the Black Star Corps was engraved. The Constellation Corridor players recognized it as well. The Black Star Corps? They actually appeared here, under the shocked gazes of everyone. The satellite base of the Black Star Corps slowly stopped outside the atmosphere of Planet Gilman and sent out a fleet to negotiate with the planet's guards. Seeing this scene, Vodka was stunned for a while. Suddenly, he exclaimed in surprise, "Woola! Could it be? The Black Star Corps is going to open a division on Planet Gilman?" Hearing this, the faces of the surrounding guild members changed, and they were overjoyed. Not long after, the news of the army's arrival spread throughout Planet Gilman. The players on the surface could see the satellite base outside the atmosphere when they looked up. Their eyes widened in excitement. Very soon, the army finished negotiating with Planet Gilman. Because of the identity of the army commander and the authority given by the Red Empire, Planet Gilman did not have the right to reject the army's request for a division to be stationed there. They could only send people to help the Black Star Corps set up the base. Immediately after, while the players were waiting in anticipation, the army finally officially announced to the world that they would be establishing a division there. As soon as the news came out, it swept through the forums like a hurricane. The players of the Constellation Corridor were all shocked. After half a month of anticipation, the Black Star Corps had really appeared in another star field. Everyone had made all sorts of guesses about how the Black Star Corps would interact with them, but no one would have thought that the Black Star Corps would directly descend on their main city-like public area. The reaction of the players was directly reflected in the forums. The topic of the army appearing on Planet Gilman instantly rose to the top of the trending topics of the Constellation Corridor. The anticipation of the past half a month turned into flames of excitement, igniting the passion of all the players. This was the first interstar field faction to come into contact with the Galaxy players. Even the forums of the other star fields were filled with excitement, especially the Shattered Star Ring. In the Shattered Star Ring, in the bustling Black Star Corps headquarters, countless players stopped in their tracks at the same time and opened the forums. The army has crossed Star Field. The forums over the Russian side have exploded in an instant. Let's go join in the fun. Ha! Let those foreigners experience what it's like to be in our army. Although we're separated by star fields, we might be on the same side in the future. Tisk, don't you think this is called recruiting members? The players of the Shattered Star Ring were excited. They spontaneously went to the forums of the Constellation Corridor and made a post there. The title and reply were all, "Welcome foreign friends to the army." In just a few minutes, this post was stacked by almost 100,000 Chinese players. Black Star Corps headquarters sent a congratulatory message. Shattered Star Ring sent a congratulatory message. Welcome Bear Race and Kangaroo Race to the Black Star Corps. Welcome newcomers. Remember our slogan, Army Leader is Awesome. It felt like they were exploding other people's forums. From version 1.0 to version 3.0, the Black Star Corps was deeply rooted in the hearts of the people. Seeing their own growth-type faction develop to such an extent, many players of the Shattered Star Ring felt gratified and proud. They felt like they had finally raised a child after going through so much trouble. Madblade, Pork Bun, Maple Moon, and many other players who had met Black Star in the beginning felt even more deeply. They had been through so many ups and downs with the Black Star Core, and those memories seemed to surge into their minds. So, they had come so far, they had mixed feelings. The operation of the Black Star Core this time seemed to be the beginning of a new era in their eyes. Maybe this was the starting point of the players being able to cross star fields. Maybe one day in the future, all the Galaxy players would be able to gather in the same star field. It was from this moment. The Army Division was officially established on planet Gilman, and its influence on the players of the Constellation Corridor immediately appeared. Almost all the players who were doing missions outside turned around and rushed to planet Gilman from the various star systems. Ever since they entered the galaxy in version 2.0, there had never been a situation where all the players gathered in the Constellation Corridor. This time, due to the appeal of the army itself and the commotion caused by crossing star fields, almost everyone was attracted by the Black Star Core and gathered from thousands of miles away. With a wave of the arm, the leak cloud came. The Army Division opened the port and announced on the Quantum Network that the division had just been established and needed to recruit a large number of people. The specific details could be found on the Army's homepage. This was because the players of the Constellation Corridor did not have a sense of belonging to the Army. What attracted them were the benefits and fame of the Army. With the example of the Shattered Star Ring, almost all the old players knew how good the benefits of the Black Star Core were. Han Zhao's operation in the 3 versions had given the Army a very high status among the players. After reading the recruitment information on his communicator, Vodka blew his nose and sighed. The benefits are too good: salary, bonuses, faction specialties, internal services of the Army, a large number of mission resources. The benefits of the Black Star Corps were much better than any of the factions that the players of the Constellation Corridor had experienced so far, especially the faction store, which was the most attractive. Han Xiao had accumulated a large number of low-grade blueprints and given them to the logistics department to mass-produce over the years. Now, the Army sold more than 10,000 types of machinery and equipment, which could be categorized in the store. Basically, there would always be one that suited you. There were also customization, repair, enhancement, and other value-added services. Other than that, there were also many dungeon crystals, gene potions, manufacturing materials, and other miscellaneous items, as well as various financial group products from other channels. The Army's faction store was like a trading hub. There was a dazzling array of products. Vice President, are we going to join the Black Star Corps? Let's go to their division. Vodka was very tempted, not to mention the attractive benefits of the Army. Just the fact that the Black Star Corps was an ally of the Red Empire was enough to dispel his hesitation. Vodka took the guild members to a spaceship and headed to the Army's division in outer space. They entered the dock, got off the spaceship, and followed the bionic robot receptionist to the hall. The hall was filled with a sea of people, and it was extremely crowded. At this time, almost all the players who stayed on planet Gilman ran over. There were many large guilds among them, and Vodka saw many of his old rivals. They were all familiar people who had fought in guild wars in the past. Everyone was here to join the Army, so they needed to submit their resumes and participate in the test. The main purpose was to test their combat strength. Other than the new players, almost all of them were grade C, so this recruitment threshold was nothing. Vodka squeezed all the way to the center of the hall. In front of him was a door that led to the combat test rooms. Groups of players lined up there, waiting for their turn to be tested. Vodka and the others waited for a while, and finally, it was their turn. A mission popped up on the interface. Faction Mission, Black Star Corps Test Mission Introduction. The rise of the Black Star Corps is filled with legends. It is now a super large organization in the Shattered Star Ring, an ally of the Red Empire. Now, the Black Star Corps has crossed star fields, recruited soldiers, and built a division in the Central Galaxy. You have received the opportunity to join the Army. However, The members of the army have to go through a strict selection process. If you want to join this faction with endless potential, you have to prove your strength. Vodka and the others did not suspect anything. Another group of players walked into the combat test room with their heads held high. At the same time, somewhere in the constellation corridor, there was a bustling tourist planet. This was a planet with almost no traces of artificial modification. It had beautiful mountains and clear waters, blue seas and blue skies, and large patches of vegetation covering the surface. The vegetation here would emit a faint fluorescent light at night, making it look like a dream. All kinds of beautiful and gentle creatures lived on the surface of the planet. Occasionally, groups of small silver beasts could be seen floating in the air between the dense forests. They were like swimming fish that took the air as the sea. This planet is really beautiful. Han Xiao and the others passed by this planet and stopped to take a look. The spaceship floated high in the sky, and the group gave up on flying. They slowly walked in the forest at night, and all they could see was beautiful scenery. Aurora liked the smell of nature very much. It was full of vitality, and she walked to the front. Ames, Hela, and the other Black Star Guard were in the middle, looking left and right to enjoy the scenery. Han Xiao walked at the back with his hands behind his back, looking at the backs of the others with a smile on his face. After smelling too much of the smell of engine oil and metal, breathing in the fresh air now felt like it was cleansing his lungs. He could not help but feel refreshed, and he started to hum a tune. Hela slowed down and retreated to Han Xiao's side. She glanced over and said, "You seem to be in a good mood today." Han Xiao's lips curled up, and he chuckled. Today, he had finally raised his sickle to the ripe leeks in other people's fields. How could he not be happy? Chapter 802. You have joined a new faction, Black Star Corps. You have received an identity, Black Star Corps member. Black Star Corps, faction interface unlocked. Black Star Corps, merit system unlocked. Black Star Corps, faction store unlocked. In the crowded Planet Gilman Army Branch Hall, Vodka and his guild officers walked out of the combat test room with the crowd. They were all looking at the notification on the interface with joy. Looking at the unlocked faction store, the dazzling array of products made them unable to move their eyes away. Vice President, there's news from the club. They're asking about the situation. Haha, tell them there's no problem. We can let those pro players join. As expected of a growing faction that has been run by the Shattered Star Ring players for 2 to 3 versions. There's almost all the class knowledge from basic to advanced. Vodka rubbed his hands and was still in a state of excitement. At this time, a group of guild players walked toward them. The leader was the vice president of the Kangaroo Guild, Captain Old Henry. It was the official guild under the famous Australian professional club, Kangaroo Boxing. It was also Vodka's old enemy, and the two sides had fought many guild wars. Hey guys, you guys are here earlier than us. Captain Old Henry saw Vodka and the others and raised his hand to greet them. You guys are here too? Vodka stopped and started chatting with them. No discord, no concord. After playing together for 3 versions, they were familiar with each other and could be considered half-friends. When they weren't in guild wars, their relationship was pretty good. Although they were competitors, there wasn't a deep hatred between the players. You guys have already joined? Yeah, there are quite a lot of people. Take your time to line up. After chatting for a while, Captain Old Henry brought his people to take the test. Vodka's Old Henry watched them leave and touched his lips. One of the guild officers whispered, "Every guild will send people to join the army. No one will let go of this opportunity. In that case, everyone will be on the same side in the future, and there will be less competition." Humph, you're wrong. Since the Black Star Corps is going to expand, there will definitely be a large number of quest resources appearing in the short term. Even if there are a lot of resources, there will still be differences between the good and the bad. For better quests and better resource points, the various large guilds will definitely fight for them. I don't think the competition between the guilds will decrease. Instead, it will become more frequent. Vodka shook his head. Is that so? From what I see, the Chinese people in the Shattered Star Ring rarely participate in guild wars to snatch resources. Who said so? They're the same, just not as intense. After all, most of them are Chinese guilds, so they don't fight much. On the other hand, we have too many guilds from different countries, so we're natural opponents. Moreover, our factions have been opposing each other for so long, so everyone is used to it. As he spoke, Vodka suddenly remembered something, and his spirit was lifted. By the way, speaking of the Shattered Star Ring, we're now members of the Black Star Corps. The army is a cross-star field faction, and the main camp is over there. I wonder if we can follow the army to the Shattered Star Ring. This was a crucial question, and everyone was curious. Vodka took out his communicator and downloaded the army assistant according to the instructions. Philip's virtual projection appeared on the screen. It was about the size of a finger and looked extremely cute. It bowed obediently and said, "Welcome to the Black Star Corps. Welcome to the Black Star Army's internal assistant. I'm a subprogram of the Army Artificial Intelligence. Philip, I'm very happy to serve the brave Black Star Warriors. If you're willing, you can give me a new appearance and a new name. Oh, cute." The cute projection hit his weak spot, and the vodka heart was about to melt. He was originally a strong, bearded man, but now he was smiling like a wrinkled chrysanthemum that had grown hair. He didn't look like a Russian bear fighter at all. Cough. Vice President, mind your image. The guild officer by the side almost wanted to dig his eyes out. Vodka wiped his mouth and hurriedly asked, "I would like to ask, can we, the new members, follow the army back to the Shattered Star Ring? It's like this. Following the highest order of the army commander, the people recruited here will usually stay behind to help the army expand. However, if you want to go to the army's main camp, according to the army's itinerary, we will borrow the Stargate channel of the Red Empire from time to time to transport resources from the main camp to the Constellation Corridor branch. If you really want to go to the Shattered Star Ring, you can submit an application and follow the transport team back. Everyone was shocked. They looked at each other with excitement in their eyes. Indeed, they could really cross star fields. Vodka suppressed his excitement and asked, "Then, will the army be returning to the Shattered Star Ring soon?" "Yes, Philip counted with his fingers and said in a crisp voice, "The Legion commander will be here for a period of time before he departs. It will probably take a month or two. When the time comes, you can follow the Legion commander back." Vodka's eyes sparkled. He nodded and looked back at everyone. "We need to talk to the president and the club." The first batch of players who happened to stay on planet Gilman joined the army one after another and shared all kinds of news about the army on the forums. The players of the various star fields were all paying attention to the Constellation Corridor forum. Most of them knew that the Constellation Corridor players could choose to cross star fields and were very envious. Those Constellation Corridor players who were still on their way to planet Gilman could not help but discuss this topic on the forums, debating whether to stay or leave. A large portion of them hesitated. We've played in the Constellation Corridor for a few versions and are very familiar with this place. If we go to the Shattered Star Ring now, won't all our efforts be wasted? Staying here will still be doing the army's mission. There's no need to go to the Shattered Star Ring and start all over again. That's right. The main reason we joined the army is for the benefits. Why go to the Shattered Star Ring? There are millions of players there, and most of them are Chinese. They've been operating there for a few versions, and we have no advantage over them. We still have to compete with them over there. That's right. We haven't even finished exploring the Constellation Corridor. Why go to another star field? This is the central galaxy, the most prosperous place in the universe. If we don't develop here and go to a remote star field, won't we be wasting our time? The time and effort invested in the 3 versions were sunk costs. Many players were reluctant to give up the fruits of their labor. If they could go and return at any time, they would not hesitate. However, they could only follow the army to cross star fields. Who knew how often the army would send out a transport team? Furthermore, they did not know if they would be allowed to return. If they were not satisfied in the Shattered Star Ring, who knew how long it would take for them to return? Of course, there were always opposing voices, but there were also players who agreed to go to the Shattered Star Ring. With a first batch of players to cross star fields, why should we give up such a good opportunity? The others don't even have a way to cross star fields. Go and play with our Chinese comrades in the Shattered Star Ring. Don't forget that the Flickering World mission is at the top of the Army's mission list. It's obviously a new main storyline. Furthermore, The mission introduction states that the development of the flickering world is the Red Empire's operation, and the Black Star Corps is only one of the participants. This main storyline is more like the dynasty's own storyline. Therefore, by joining the army to explore the flickering world, we're actually working for the Red Empire. That's right. Maybe helping the dynasty explore a new star field is one of the main storylines of the Constellation Corridor. The Black Star Corps might be recruiting us to bring us over and let us participate in the mission. In the past 10 years, the Red Empire's plans for the flickering world were known to everyone. The players in the territory of the Red Empire naturally knew about it. Although they did not know the importance of the flickering world in the future, they were very interested in it. After the Tyrant's Party, Han Shao had kept the flickering world main storyline mission at the top of the army's list. After such a long time, the effect was obvious. It was just right to attract the Constellation Corridor players to explore the flickering world with him. It was also convenient for him to transplant the wild leeks into the greenhouse at home. Of course, it was impossible for him to recruit all the players in the Constellation Corridor at once. Meeting the ruler would only take a few days, but Han Technician had planned to stay in the Constellation Corridor for 2 to 3 months before he left. His goal was to give the players there enough time to make up their minds. From his standpoint, the more players who were willing to explore the flickering world with him, the better. The debate on the forums was getting more and more intense. A few days later, more and more players rushed to Planet Gilman to join the army, and more people gathered. Very soon, the number of players on Planet Gilman exceeded 2 million, and the number was increasing every day. Almost all the large guilds had a base on Planet Gilman. Very soon, the club guilds in Russia, Australia, and various small countries began to discuss this issue. In the base of the Power and Glory Guild, the presidents and vice presidents of the 6 large Russian guilds gathered. These 6 guilds were the largest guilds in Russia, and they all had club backgrounds behind them. They were basically the representatives of the Russian professional circle and were the leaders in the hearts of many Russian players. They would occasionally fight guild wars with each other, but they would also discuss countermeasures together when something big happened. Everyone, has your club made up your mind? Have you decided to stay or leave? The president of the Power and Glory Guild asked. The people above said that the team members will not be going. Instead, they want us to transfer some of our guild members to the Shattered Star Ring and try to open a branch there. Same for us. The club members feel that the opportunity to cross star fields is rare and cannot give it up. There might be additional benefits in the future. Everyone replied. The president of the Power and Glory Guild looked around and said, "It seems like the plans of all the large guilds are similar. We're going to let the vice president bring some people to cross star fields and explore the path for us." Vodka walked out from the crowd and nodded at everyone. He was the candidate sent by the club to the Shattered Star Ring to manage the branch. I wonder what Australia will do. Probably the same as us. So, we still have to compete with them when we go to the Shattered Star Ring. Then we have to call some normal players over, or we'll be at a disadvantage. Because these 6 guilds were the authoritative representatives of the professional circle, they had a certain amount of appeal to the normal Russian players. If they raised their arms and set an example for the players, they would be able to attract a lot of people to follow them. It's not just the Australian guilds. That's the territory of China. Let's communicate with the Chinese clubs first. They've been operating there for 3 versions. After all, they're the owners. It's better to inform them before going over. At the same time, the guilds in Australia also gathered together. The situation was similar to that in Russia, and they all came up with the same plan. The Russian and Australian clubs quickly contacted the leading clubs in China. They were all in the same profession and had each other's contact information. The various large guilds in China held a meeting. Jade Green Sky has entered the chat room. Morning Snow Twilight Frost has entered the chat room. Jupiter has entered the chat room. The presidents of Temple of God, Long Sky, Dynasty, and Fried Eggplants with Fish, as well as Thunderstorm, Fanatics, Rivervale, and some other famous official club guilds all entered the chat room. Sky Territory's president, Jade Green Sky, said, "The Russians and the Australian club guilds want to come over. What are they doing? Drizzle River's president, Green Mountain Rain, said, I can't help it. The Shattered Star Ring is our chosen home ground, and we've been operating there for 3 versions. I don't know what the club people are thinking to actually agree to such a thing. Nine Doors president, 3 gets 9, said, take the stars, the club's fruit drops as long as they agree. Race of God's president, Jupiter, said, type in Mandarin. I can't understand. Jade Green Sky said, how old are you already, and you still call yourself a baby? Disgusting. Ancient Dynasty's president, Morning Snow Twilight Frost, sent a funny smiley face. They chatted for a while. Although they were the managers of the guilds under the club, they could not make the decision on this matter. They could only follow the wishes of the upper echelons of the club. The upper echelons told the guilds to prepare for the possible competition, and they could only follow. They had no choice. The clubs did not want the competition to come and fight for resources. They wanted to monopolize the army's resources, but this was not their decision. The Black Star Corps' actions were the result of the storyline. The army had decided to bring people back, and they could only accept the fact. However, these guilds did not panic. The Shattered Star Ring was their base, and they had a huge advantage. The players from the Constellation Corridor would not be able to compete with them. If these foreign club guilds did not cause any trouble, it would be fine. However, if they wanted to compete with the Chinese clubs for benefits, in order to ensure the resources of their own pro players, these famous clubs did not mind mobilizing their guild members to start a national war with the Chinese players and let these foreign guilds know who the real master of the Shattered Star Ring was. Just as this topic was slowly fermenting, causing the players of the Constellation Corridor and the Shattered Star Ring to discuss it, Han Xiao and the others, who had been traveling slowly, finally arrived at Planet Gilman. For the first time, they had descended in front of the players of another star field. Remember the mobile version of the website, M809 Attraction and Choice, the position of the guilds, page 1/1, bookmark for easier reading. Chapter 803. Han Xiao did not come quietly, but with great fanfare. The army branch sent out a notice to all the members to welcome the arrival of the army commander. Many of the new players came over to watch. They had heard of the name of Black Star and the Shattered Star Ring, but had never seen this big boss in person. On Planet Gilman and the army branch, countless players looked out the window and saw a spaceship flying out of the blue Stargate not far away. It slowly approached the branch and became clearer. Whoosh! The spaceship entrances of the spaceship port were densely packed, like a beehive. The spaceship entered one of the entrances, entered the electromagnetic track, and entered the spacious dock. The dock and port of the branch were already filled with players. Countless people turned on the video and screenshot function and uploaded it to the forums. The hatch slid open, and Han Xiao, who was wearing a black robe and surrounded by hovering guards, walked out. He glanced at everyone, smiled, and connected to the quantum network. The next moment, Han Xiao's face appeared on the communicators of countless people present, and the same voice sounded. I'm Black Star. Welcome to the army. The voices of all the communicators were synchronized and overlapped into the same voice. There was an inexplicable sense of majesty. Everyone was shocked. They had never seen a high-level mechanic hack into so many communicators at once. Furthermore, it looked like he had done it casually. Everyone felt that such an ability made him look like an expert. It was quite ostentatious. They were not like the old players in the Shattered Star Ring who had accompanied Han Xiao for 3 versions. They had only met Calamity grades before, and this was the first time they had come into close contact with a legendary beyond grade A in the galaxy. After hearing so many rumors about Han Xiao on the forums, the Constellation Corridor players had all kinds of opinions about Han Xiao. The first impression that Han Xiao gave them was that he was unfathomable. Vodka mixed in the crowd and used the players' detect ability on Han Xiao. The actions of the players around him were surprisingly the same as his. Based on your level, you can only receive the following information. Han Xiao, Black Star Corps Captain, green name, level. Attributes. Abilities. Danger level, extremely lethal. As expected of a bunch of question marks, Vodka muttered softly. Ames followed, closely behind, standing shoulder to shoulder with Han Xiao. Hela and the others also disembarked one after another, surrounding and guarding Han Xiao. Glancing around at the sea of people, Ames tilted her head and glanced at Han Xiao with a faint smile. Congratulations, your army has expanded again. It doesn't sound like you're being sincere, Han Xiao joked. Before he could finish speaking, a sudden change occurred. Pa! A strong light suddenly shone in the crowd, blinding everyone's vision. Rumble! Dozens of figures jumped out from the crowd and launched attacks at Han Xiao and his group. All kinds of cannonballs, spells, and abilities were thrown at Han Xiao as if they were free. Hela's face was expressionless. She took a step forward and pointed with her finger. Dark red energy beams shot out one after another, piercing through every single one of the attackers' bodies and taking away their lives, easily killing them in an instant. The next moment, these attackers turned into white light and disappeared. They were a group of players. Seeing this, Han Zhao's mouth twitched, but he did not find it strange. Although a large number of players were working for the army, he had never forgotten the chaotic nature of the players. There would always be a small group of people who would take risks or cause trouble for fun. This was the first time they had met a big boss, and dozens of especially chaotic and amusing players had attacked him without caring about the consequences. They probably had the mentality of fighting the boss. If this was in the Shattered Star Ring, the Chinese players who had known him for 3 versions would not do such a thing. However, the army did not have a foundation in the Constellation Corridor. Furthermore, the players here were foreigners who liked to try all kinds of possibilities. The players were shocked, and they looked at each other, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. There were actually people who attacked the beyond Grade A boss Black Star. They were a bunch of gamblers who wanted to cause trouble even though they knew there was no chance of success. The players present had just joined the army, so they did not have any intention of fighting the same enemy. Most of them were just here to watch the show. Just looking at the character detection information did not give them much of a feeling, but the officers around Black Star had casually killed dozens of Grade B players. The strength they displayed made the hearts of many players tremble. Some of the players who had ulterior motives but had not made up their minds to take action secretly dismissed their thoughts. What a joke. This boss was stronger than any NPC they had ever seen. The efficiency of them going up to kill him was probably not much different from killing him in the storyline. Among the players who had joined the Constellation Corridor, there were bound to be some ticking time bombs. Han Xiao was not surprised by this. He gave an order to Philip in his mind, and Philip immediately issued a bounty for the attackers through the Army's assistant program. The Army's branches were all under Philip's surveillance, so it was not difficult to determine the identity of the attackers. Ding ding. Everyone's communicators immediately rang. Seeing the bounty, they were all shocked. Those people just now are wanted. It seems like there's a reward for killing them every time. I seem to know a few of them. I even added them as friends. Oh my, there's even tracking coordinates on the communicator. Did they revive on planet Gilman? Most of the players were gloating. Many who were ready to take action all stopped after seeing the consequences of attacking the officers of the army. Being wanted by the army meant that these attackers would become red-named players in the eyes of the army members. They would be hunted down by countless players, and in the future, they would most likely be tortured by other players. Han Xiao was already quite familiar with this process. Instead of being shocked, the attackers made him happy. Was this not a good partner who took the initiative to help him establish his dominance? What kind of spirit was this? This was the spirit of internationalism, the spirit of setting an example and sacrificing oneself for others. It was a good opportunity to let the players of the Constellation Corridor know the consequences of acting recklessly and let them see the price they had to pay for causing trouble. It reminded the players of the Constellation Corridor that doing bad things had costs. This small episode did not cause much of a commotion. Looking around at the foreign players around him, Han Xiao did not plan to stop to give a speech. He led the group through the crowd. The players all opened up a path and watched as Han Xiao left. They discussed among themselves and gradually dispersed. On the way, Han Xiao pondered. The Constellation Corridor players naturally have no sense of belonging to the army. Temptation is the main reason. In the future, I'll get people to slowly spread the history of the army to them and increase their sense of identity. He did not plan to personally cultivate relationships with this group of people like he did with the players of the Shattered Star Ring. There were a few main reasons. First, the Black Star Corps had been operating according to his plan for many years. The faction attraction formed by the foundation, reputation, and so on was already the main tool used to attract players. The faction interface could basically satisfy all the needs of the players. As long as they spent money in the faction store, they would be able to provide him with income. He did not need to do anything personally. Second, too many players wanted to farm his favorability in an attempt to trigger missions or learn skills. Thus, they came over to chat and give him gifts. Han Xiao did not want to receive gifts 24 hours a day. Third, due to his identity as the army commander, he could not be easily contacted by everyone. The hierarchy of the army still had to be maintained. Thus, Han Xiao had long set a rule. Only members who had accumulated a certain amount of contribution points in the army could apply to meet the army commander or the senior officers of the army. To the players, this was an opportunity to be taught skills by characters. Han Xiao was using this to stimulate the enthusiasm of the players to farm contribution points for the army and give them a chance to farm the favorability of the officers. Only when the favorability was high enough would they be able to learn the special skills of characters. This was to package the favorability of himself and the officers as a rare commodity that was worth hoarding. This would increase his value and make the players put in more effort. Having been harvesting leaks for more than 10 years, Han Xiao was already very familiar with this method. Now, most of the Constellation Corridor players are considering whether to leave or stay. I'll stay here for more than a month before going back. I'll wait for the Red Empire to prepare the troops to explore the flickering world. He originally thought that the Constellation Corridor players attacking him was just a small matter, but he did not expect it to cause an unexpected impact on the forums and make the Chinese players in the Shattered Star Ring unhappy. After 3 versions, the Chinese players had the deepest feelings for the Black Star Corps and saw it as their main faction. As the army commander, Han Xiao was the publicly acknowledged leader of the faction. However, now that the army commander had gone to another star field to recruit people, he was attacked by the players of that star field. This made people feel that their good intentions were being treated as ill intentions. Although it was impossible for this to cause any danger to the army commander, many Chinese players felt that this was too much. It was as if their beloved item was being treated crudely by someone else, and this ignited a common hatred. The atmosphere on the forums instantly changed, and many people on both sides started arguing. However, this did not affect Han Xiao's plan. As usual, he led the group to stay in the planet Gilman division and waited for the players to gather there. Of course, he did not just wait. While waiting for the players to gather, he spent a lot of time in the machinery workshop, expanding his mech legion and developing new high-level machinery blueprints. After settling down for 2 days, Han Xiao contacted the people of the Red Empire and applied for an ultimate knowledge. This time, the Red Empire did not reject him. After spending 6,000 faction contribution points, he finally obtained the first ultimate knowledge that he had always wanted. Energy Branch, Mechanical Life Tinder. This was the prerequisite knowledge to activate the core ability of the Emperor Mechanic class, King's Mentor. The class knowledges of the Mechanic class were split into 5 levels: Basic, Advanced, High-End, Peak, and the final ultimate knowledges. As the highest level of class knowledges, every single ultimate knowledges could bring about a complete transformation in a certain aspect of a mechanic's skills. For example, this knowledge could give a mechanic the ability to turn machinery into mechanical life forms. It was almost equivalent to the creation of mechanical life forms, turning a machine from a lifeless, inanimate object into a real living unit. To put it in perspective, the interface would no longer be an item introduction, but character information. Just like NPC characters, they would have levels, attributes, and skills. They could also be continuously leveled up and possess a complete growth ability. They could even grow into an elite model or a boss model. Of course, good things were never cheap. Not to mention the difficulty of obtaining ultimate knowledge. Just the potential points required to learn ultimate knowledge was extremely expensive. Originally, the cost of mechanic class knowledge increased progressively. 1 point for basic knowledge, 2 for advanced knowledge, 3 for high-end knowledge, and 4 for peak knowledge. However, the cost of ultimate knowledge doubled, requiring 8 potential points. Furthermore, this was only the cost of the branch knowledge after the class advancement. If one were to learn other branches of knowledge, just like peak knowledge, the cost would be 3 times the original cost, which was 24 potential points. Hanshao was a virtual mechanic, and Mechanical Life Tinder was the ultimate knowledge of the energy branch, which required 24 potential points to level up. It was extremely difficult for normal players to obtain 24 potential points. Other than leveling up, the main way for mechanic players to obtain potential points was to level up their blueprint skills to the max level. However, this required a huge amount of experience. Therefore, for mechanic players in the later stages, doing missions to obtain potential points was to level up their skills. Even if they were to level up in the version, they still had to earn experience. Generally speaking, only elite players and pro players would have such a high demand. However, pro players had clubs to help them level up their accounts, so they would not be too greedy. If it were normal casual players, they would have to make a choice. Most mechanic players would only learn the ultimate knowledge of their own class. However, Han Technician's situation was completely different. The high cost of potential points for other branches of ultimate knowledge was enough to make players despair, but it was not like he could not afford it. If he did not have enough experience, he could make up for it with leaks. Due to the punishment of the evolution cube, Han Shao had not leveled up during this period. The experience that he had accumulated was now put to good use. He opened the interface, selected a few blueprint skills, and leveled them all up to the max level. On the interface, the potential points kept changing, increasing bit by bit, and finally reached 24 potential points. As the total level of the character increased, the cost of leveling up some low-level skills would also increase. Players could choose to suppress their level and level up slowly to reduce the cost of leveling up. However, there were a few problems with this. Firstly, there were too many blueprints, and as the character's level increased, the low-level blueprints would gradually be eliminated. Secondly, if they suppressed their level, they would only be able to do missions that corresponded to their level. The speed of earning experience would naturally not be as fast as high-level characters, and it would be difficult for them to catch up. Therefore, suppressing one's level had its pros and cons usually. Only those who leveled up their smurfs, such as Han Technician, would choose to suppress their level to earn more potential points. From the start, Han Shao was destined to not take the path of suppressing his level. 22, 23, 24 potential points. Seeing that he had enough potential points, Han Shao immediately invested all of them to learn the ultimate knowledge. His potential points were reset to 0. Learning successfully learned. You have learned Mechanical Life Tinder. Prerequisite requirements have been met. Your ability, King's Mentor, has been activated. You have received the talent, Ultimate Knowledge Possessor. Ultimate Knowledge Possessor, plus 15% attributes of the mechanical creations you create, plus 150% machinery affinity. You have mastered the mechanic class Ultimate Knowledge, and you have a deeper understanding of the path of machinery. You are now a master mechanic. You have received the talent, Mechanical Life Creator. Mechanical Life Creator. The mechanical life created by you will see you as their creator. Their faith and loyalty to you exist at the bottom of their logic. When receiving your mechanical force bonuses, they will receive the Encourage effect, plus 10% basic attributes. You have learned the ability Tinder Awakening. Tinder Awakening. This ability can turn mechanical creations into mechanical life, igniting the tinder of thought of mechanical life. Requirements. Can only be used on mechanical targets that have received the buffs of King's Mentor and Machinery Fusion. Give. Can be cast in groups. No cooldown. Consumption. 50% health, 50% energy, 80% stamina. Because of Tinder Awakening, your Emperor's Gift has received a new effect. Changes. When you use Emperor's Gift on a mechanical life, there's a chance that the target's template will be upgraded, receiving higher growth potential. For example, it will be upgraded from a normal template to an elite template. Note, the higher the target's template, the lower the chance of triggering. To bid farewell to the old and welcome the new, Happy New Year's Eve. Chapter 804. Every ultimate knowledge was related to the domain of God, and the prerequisite to learning it was extremely high intelligence. Han Xiao chose the energy branch, mechanical life Tinder, not only to activate King's Mentor, but also because this ultimate knowledge had a wider range of applications. Compared to the virtual technology ultimate knowledge that specialized in civil wars, mechanical life Tinder was more useful to him at the moment. As the complicated knowledge flowed into his mind, images flashed before Han Xiao's eyes. On the barren black land, a figure planted a lump of metal. After the world changed, bright mechanical cities rose from the ground, and metal quickly spread on the surface, replacing the soil. Countless blue creatures in exquisite clothing knelt on the ground, and their consciousness entered the mechanical constructs in the cultivation cabins through the tubes, abandoning their physical bodies. Countless abandoned parts were scattered in the darkness like an abyss. One day, a golden bolt of lightning descended from the sky and shot straight into the rift, spreading out a golden energy wave. The abandoned mechanical parts seemed to be gathered by an invisible force, turning into crude mechanical life forms. These are the origins of mechanical life forms. All kinds of illusions flashed past, and Han Zhao's eyes moved slightly. Machines were just tools that countless races learned to use and create during the development of their civilizations. There were many races in the galaxy, but pure mechanical life forms that evolved from nature almost did not exist. Most of them were created by humans. Some races created mechanical soldiers for war, giving birth to mechanical life forms. Some races abandoned their fragile physical bodies and turned into mechanical life forms to survive disasters. Some races lacked the ability to move in the real world, so they created mechanical life forms as slaves, and so on. Beyond grade A mechanics were the main creators of mechanical life forms. After learning the knowledge, Han Xiao let out a sigh of relief, calming his brain down. He looked at the new abilities on the interface. There were two talents. Ultimate Knowledge Holder was the ability that came with the first ultimate knowledge, and Mechanical Life Creator was the talent that came with Mechanical Life Tinder. Han Xiao looked at the new ability, Tinder Awakening. This was the highlight. With a thought, the hovering guards behind his head buzzed at the same time and flew in front of him. They assembled in a dazzling manner and turned into a humanoid mechanical soldier. Smooth silver alloy armor, streamlined body, and the cannons that originally belonged to the hovering cannons were embedded in the palms, knees, shoulders, head, and ribs. The gaps of the armor were filled with psionic blue light, and it gave off a strong technological vibe. This was one of the elite mechanical soldiers that Han Xiao had mastered, called the Hovering Fissioner. It could act as his hovering guards, and could also be combined into a mechanical soldier. High-grade machinery, orange equipment. This hovering Fissioner was controlled by Spartan, and it stood quietly in front of him, not moving at all. Let's try it. Buzz. Han Xiao raised his hand, clenched his fist, and activated King's Mentor. A ball of blue-gold, lightning mechanical force was formed in his palm. It was as dense as a thundercloud, crackling loudly. The next moment, this ball of mechanical force hit the hovering Fissioner and turned into arcs of electricity that slithered on the surface of the mechanical soldier. Then, it drilled into the gaps of the armor and merged into the energy furnace of the mechanical soldier. He did not stop there, and another ball of mechanical force appeared in his palm. He injected it into the hovering Fissioner and used machinery fusion bestowal on it. After doing these two things, Han Xiao activated Tinder Awakening. His eyes glowed with a golden light, and a ball of dazzling golden mechanical force appeared in his palm. Although Tinder Awakening did not have a cooldown, there was a restriction to its usage. Only a mechanical target that had been modified by King's Mentor and Machinery Fusion Gift could use Tinder Awakening, and these two skills had a cooldown. These three abilities, together with Emperor's Gift, formed a complete set of abilities to upgrade mechanical life forms. Han Xiao raised his palm, and the dazzling golden mechanical force flowed into the hovering Fissioner. Han Xiao's health, stamina, and energy were greatly depleted, and his status instantly dropped below half. 50% of his health and stamina were depleted in an instant, and he instantly lost half of his health. The feeling of weakness was like an electric current running through his body, and his legs felt like they had been emptied. This move is a little tiring. Han Xiao's mouth twitched. Ever since he became a Beyond Grade A Super, this should be the first time he lost so much health in one go. Exhaling, Han Xiao allowed his body to slowly recover while he stared at the hovering Fissioner in front of him. Ding! All of a sudden, the energy of the hovering Fissioner shone brightly. The next second, the mechanical components all over its body moved on their own, and the plates on its body opened and closed like scales. Clank! Han Xiao could sense that the hovering Fissioner was undergoing a transformation on a microscopic level. Countless nano-sized, silicon-based nerve fibers grew crazily along the mechanical structure in the body. With a sizzling sound, the components of the whole body gradually merged into an organic whole. The electric sparks of thinking ignited in the chip circuit, colliding with each other to build a special thinking organ, forming the underlying logic. Energy flowed endlessly, providing fuel support for this transformation. Bang! Something seemed to have awakened in the hovering Fissioner's body, igniting the spark of life. This state lasted for quite a while before the energy of the hovering Fissioner returned to normal. Han Xiao sized it up and said, "Sparta, give me the test report." Test complete. A new consciousness has been born in this unit. It's very young and is trying to communicate with me. I've temporarily closed its network interface. What should I do now? Please give the order, Master. Sparta appeared in the quantum network and spoke with a solemn tone, completely unlike Philip's liveliness. Build a data firewall for its thoughts first. Check its underlying logic and see if there are any instructions that can't be betrayed. Then, open its network interface and select some information for it to download. Han Xiao gave a series of instructions before giving the hovering Fissioner a slap, dealing damage and triggering a combat notification. The attributes of the hovering Fissioner were displayed on the interface. It was no longer an equipment introduction, but a character's attributes panel. Its race was displayed as Mechanical Life Entity, and it had a character level, a full level 185. It could level up like a character. Its mechanical attributes became health points, its various attributes became strength, dexterity, and other attributes, and its various weapons and components became talents and skills. It had the ability to grow on its own. It became a life unit. Han Xiao was invigorated, and he said, "Sparta, give it control and let it control its own body." Sparta nodded and temporarily stopped controlling the hovering Fissioner. The hovering Fissioner trembled, and its originally tense body seemed to relax. It turned its head with a series of clicks, as if it was adapting to the vision provided by the sensor. Then, it raised its hand and touched its face, producing a rustling sound. The feeling that it gave off was completely different. When the combat artificial intelligence controlled the mechanical soldiers, although the mechanical soldiers' movements are not stiff, they would not have any unnecessary movements. They were dead objects that followed orders. However, when the control authority was returned to the hovering Fissioner, which had awakened the Tinder, its movements were immediately filled with vitality. It became a life form that could think, question, and move randomly. Philip and Sparta were products of the virtual technology level and belonged to artificial intelligence life forms. They were fundamentally different from these mechanical life forms in the physical sense. The independent thoughts of mechanical life forms were equivalent to their freedom and soul. They had emotions and feelings. However, their thoughts were produced from the circuits of the chip and were not souls in the conventional sense. Thus, they were immune to normal psychic and psychic attacks. To mechanical life forms, the virtual mechanics attacks were the real psychic attacks. They could invade the consciousness of mechanical life forms and rewrite their underlying logic. Han Xiao had preset the command logic of the hovering fissioner, and the AI's control authority was one level higher. It was equivalent to the highest military order that could not be violated. This was quite similar to the insectoids, or should it be called the mechanical insectoids? The hovering fissioner observed its surroundings and turned to look at Han Xiao. It used its voice system to ask a question, using the preset galactic lingua franca. Master, Han Xiao nodded and walked around it, observing it from head to toe. The hovering fissioner stood where it was and did not move. Its head turned 360 degrees, and its eyes followed Han Xiao the entire time. It was filled with the confusion of a newborn. Why's a little scary? Han Xiao smacked his lips and said, "Do you have anything you want to ask?" Ask. The hovering fissioner paused for a moment. It seemed to be thinking quickly. After thinking for a while, it asked, "Who am I? Where am I? What do I need to do?" Great, the ultimate 3 questions. Han Xiao found it funny. He shook his head and said, "Sparta, turn on the network interface and inject information into it." The next moment, the hovering fissioner stopped moving. Countless information about the galaxy, life, and combat flowed into its mind, and it quickly digested it. It instantly skipped the ignorant stage of a newborn. It was silent for a while before suddenly kneeling on one knee toward Han Xiao and changing the way it addressed him. "Your Excellency Black Star, my creator." Its voice system simulated a respectful tone. Han Xiao raised his brows, thought for a while, and asked, "Do you know who you are now?" "I'm your descendant." It gave itself a name. "My name is Psionic Prime." "Psionic Prime? Why don't you call yourself Elder Netherspring?" Han Xiaoxin complained to his mind before saying with a deep voice, "You're the first generation of mechanical life that I created. Let me see your combat strength." Ka. Psionic Prime moved and tested all kinds of weapons. It disintegrated into individual hovering guards time and time again, flying around like butterflies before merging back together again and again. Its combat style was extremely agile and dazzling. Mechanical life forms had a high degree of control over their bodies and could learn skills on their own, which were fixed in their character interface. Han Zhao's mechanical force bonuses were also effective. Without the need for AI control, Psionic Prime could unleash extremely strong combat strength on its own. It was even stronger than before the Tinder was awakened. "Come back." After testing for a while, Han Xiao said, and Psionic Prime took the initiative to disintegrate into hovering guards, circling around him obediently. The effect is not bad. Han Xiao was satisfied and started calculating. Only by using a set of skills, such as Tinder Awakening and King's Mentor, could he create mechanical life forms with the ability to grow on their own. The efficiency was limited, and it was mainly used to nurture soldiers so that they could slowly grow into elite units and mini-boss units. As for most of the mechanical soldiers and cannon fodder, Han Xiao did not plan to turn them into mechanical life forms for the time being. Firstly, due to the efficiency limitation, he wanted to awaken the high-level mechanical army first. Secondly, the death rate of cannon fodder was too high, and the long-term effect would not be as good as high-level machinery. After turning into mechanical life forms, I can even develop my own mechanical civilization. There are some mechanical civilizations under the Mecha Empire, and all of them are my vassal countries, Han Xiao pondered. Letting mechanical life forms develop their own civilization was also a path that could be followed. Nurturing a mechanical civilization that would listen to his orders, all of which would automatically operate, reproduce, and incubate the next generation, providing an endless source of soldiers. The only problem was that it would take a lot of time. However, he had a long lifespan and strong stamina. The version update also had a very long time span, so it was not a big problem. Or maybe I can snatch other people's ready-made mechanical civilization? Han Xiao dismissed this thought immediately. He thought about it and felt that it was better not to make enemies everywhere. It was impossible for him to be reckless. The Great Mechanicon was more like a steady roly-poly toy. After successfully obtaining the ultimate knowledge, Han Xiaoxin was very satisfied. He walked out of the workshop and saw a few people immediately. Hella, Fu Ding, Hardaway, and the rest of the Black Star Guard were all waiting at the door. What are you guys doing here? Han Xiao looked around and fixed his gaze on Hardaway. This guy was standing in front of everyone with a mysterious smile on his face. Hardaway took out a stack of Wayne cards and showed the topmost card to Han Xiao. Look, your car has been updated again. Han Xiao took a closer look. This was his own strong card, Black Star Han Xiao. The information had finally been updated to Beyond Grade and Red Empire Ally. The description also included his battle with Heber and Cisco, greatly increasing the card's effect. Isn't this something that will happen sooner or later? You guys didn't come here just to show me this, did you? Han Xiao was speechless. With his status, how could the Wayne car manufacturer not update his card? If he dared not update it, his head would explode. Hardaway chuckled and rubbed his fingers together skillfully. With a schwa sound, the cards in his hand spread out like a peacock spreading its tail. Han Xiao took a look and raised his brows. These cards were Hella, Fu Ding, and the others. The standard was Black Star Corps Guards. Just like the vanguard officials of Bloodshed Land, they now had their own cards. When the Black Star Corps Guards were formed, one of the goals was to make Hella and the others famous. Now that this goal had been achieved, the identity of the Black Star Corps Guards had become their label. The group had specially come to share this good news with Han Xiao. Han Xiao smiled and patted Fu Ding's shoulder, causing Chun Xing to roll her eyes. That's not bad. Congratulations, you guys now have a place in the universe. This time, Aurora said, Uncle, there's one more thing. A special person wants to see you. Who? Someone from the dynasty? No. That person claims to be the Lord of Sodrian. His name is Troy. The Lord of Sodrian? Han Xiaoxin's heart skipped a beat. Sodrian was a novice planet for the Constellation Corridor players in version 1.0. Because the Lord was involved in politics, it was suppressed by the star system civilization as a rebellion. The Lord fled with his fleet and hid everywhere. Why did this guy come to find me? Han Xiao was curious. Troy was the only one in the meeting room, and he seemed to have a lot on his mind. This person was a humanoid male. His yellow hair was tied into an exotic braid. His ears were pointed, and his nose was a pair of small holes in the middle of his face. His appearance wasn't bad, but he was a little older. He was tall, had hands and feet, but no tail. He had a pair of wide wings on his back and was covered in yellow feathers. He had certain feathered genes. I wonder if Black Star will agree to help me. Troy's eyes flickered. He had fled with his fleet and was constantly being chased by the star system civilization. The situation was not looking good. If this continued, he would be captured by the star system civilization sooner or later. Because it involved some political secrets and the secret operations of his political enemies, Troy knew that if he was captured, his fate would be worse than death. Just as he was extremely anxious about the future, he received news that the Black Star Army had opened a branch on planet Gilman and was wantonly recruiting people. His thoughts immediately became active, and he felt that Black Star might be able to help him. As long as he could rely on the Black Star Corps, follow the Black Star Corps fleet, borrow the Stargate of the Red Empire, leave the Central Galaxy, and escape to the Shattered Star Ring, he would be safe. Troy originally wanted to hide his identity and join the army, secretly sneaking out of the Central Galaxy. However, after thinking about it, he felt that the risk of being seen through by a beyond grade, a super, was too high, and it would be difficult to hide from them. When the time came, he would even lose this escape route. Thus, he might as well take the initiative to meet Black Star, explain the situation clearly, and openly state his request, try to convince Black Star to help them escape. The way he saw it, only by leaving the Central Galaxy would he have a chance to make a comeback and take revenge on his political enemies. Thinking about how his political enemies had destroyed his years of hard work, Troy's expression became even more gloomy and resentful. He had become a traitor, and there was no way he could return to the civilization. Now that the situation was stronger than him, he could only escape. If he grasped the opportunity one day, he would not hesitate to destroy everything of his political enemies and take revenge on the civilization that had been chasing him. Swoosh! The sound of the door opening interrupted Troy's thoughts. He hurriedly stood up and respectfully looked to Han Xiao, who walked in. "Your Excellency, Black Star." Troy hurriedly bowed respectfully and introduced himself, pretending to be terrified. "I've heard of your deeds. It's said that you're a traitor now. Why are you looking for me?" Han Xiao asked. "It's like this." Troy took a deep breath and used the sincere tone that he had practiced hundreds of times to tell Han Xiao the story that he had prepared long ago. The gist of it was that he was framed by his political enemies and caused a misunderstanding with the civilization. In order to protect himself, he could only resist and escape, which forced him to become a traitor. Now, he wanted to join the Black Star Corps and was willing to work for the army in exchange for a chance to escape to the Shattered Star Ring. "Is that so?" Han Xiao narrowed his eyes and sized Troy up. Suddenly, he seemed to have thought of something, and his eyes gradually became strange. "On the first day of Chinese New Year, I went to visit relatives. It wasn't easy for me to use the red packet cart to overturn the naughty brat and snatch back my computer to write. The word count for the past few days is still okay." Chapter 805. Looking at Troy's fearful and respectful expression, Han Xiao laughed and asked, "So you're saying that you're innocent? You were set up to end up like this?" Troy swallowed his saliva and said, "I was set up by my political enemies, and many of the crimes were put on me by them." Han Xiao let out a long "oh" and did not comment. He said, "You want to join me now, take refuge under me, and ask me to protect you?" "I don't dare ask for your protection," Troy said carefully. "I only ask that you allow me to leave the Central Galaxy through the Stargate with the Black Star Corps fleet. I'm now wanted by a star system civilization, and I can't use the Stargate without anyone's help." Han Xiao shook his head and laughed. "All the civilizations in the Constellation Corridor are controlled by the Dynasty. Don't you know that I'm an ally of the Dynasty? You're now wanted by a vassal civilization of the Dynasty, and you came to find me. It's already good enough that I don't arrest you on the spot. You want me to take the risk and bring you to the Shattered Star Ring? You're just casually asking me to help you for free. Do I look like a philanthropist to you?" No, you're mistaken." Troy waved his hands. "Although I want to take refuge here, I sincerely want to join the Black Star Corps. Your rise in the Shattered Star Ring has spread throughout the universe, and I've admired you for a long time. If you don't mind, I'm willing to work for you in the future." "Oh." Han Xiao rested his elbows on the table and crossed his palms. He stared straight at Troy and said slowly, "Do you think I'll believe you when you say you're innocent? Your ambition failed, and you're now wanted by the civilization. So you want me to be your backer and pay the price for your failure. Is there such a good thing in the world?" In truth, this guy was not innocent at all. During the years he ruled Sodrian, he had secretly planned many schemes to gain more power. After his schemes were exposed, he was suppressed by the civilization. Although there were some exaggerations from his political enemies, he was not innocent either. Neither side was a good person. There was nothing wrong with Troy's description of the incident, but he had changed his explanation and deliberately concealed some of his own factors, not telling the whole truth. He wanted to shift the blame and reduce the severity of his crimes, portraying himself as someone who had no choice. He wanted to lower Han Xiao's wariness. However, this method was useless against Han Xiao. Sodrian was the earliest novice planet in the Constellation Corridor, and Han Xiao knew everything that happened behind the scenes. Troy could not hide it at all. Furthermore, Han Xiao checked the forums and browsed through the posts recorded by the Constellation Corridor players. There was a hidden mission recorded in it. When Troy was escaping, he arranged for people to plant high-energy explosives in the government building of Sodrian's capital city. The explosives were enough to flatten dozens of streets, and he did not care about the casualties of the workers and civilians. It was very vicious. However, This triggered the hidden mission of the players, and the trap was destroyed by the players. Troy's backup plan did not succeed, but also proved that this guy was not a good person. He was vengeful and unscrupulous. Under Han Zhao's gaze, Troy's face froze, and he panicked. If it was not for the fact that he was desperate, he would not have tried anything in his desperation. He gritted his teeth, threw away his pride, and suddenly knelt down at Han Zhao's feet. In the galactic culture, this action represented a great ceremony of submission. Who are you? Who dares to lie to you? I did not express myself clearly and caused you to misunderstand. I apologize to you, and I hope that you can save my life. I'm willing to serve you forever. Han Zhao secretly curled his lips. He knew what Troy was thinking. He had committed a crime and had no other way out. Coincidentally, the army was recruiting people, so he wanted to come here to seek refuge. He wanted to use his glib tongue to deceive everyone. Now that he had failed, he wanted to find someone to help him bear the consequences. There was no such thing as easy as that. If it were not for Troy's special use, Han Zhao would have already sent people to capture Troy and exchange him for the bounty. It would be a waste not to take a bag of money that was delivered to his door. Han Zhao stood up, lowered his head, and glanced at the back of Troy's head. I don't need you to serve me, and I don't need your gratitude. I can't be bothered to capture you. Just pretend that I never saw you. Now, get out of my sight, and don't let me see you again, or else, swoosh. The door slid open, and Hela walked in. She stared at Troy coldly, clearly telling him to scram. Troy's face was on the ground, and his expression could not be seen clearly. After 2 seconds, he got up and patted the bottom of his clothes as if he was trying to brush away the non-existent dust. His head was lowered, and his eyes were looking at the ground at a 45-degree angle, not daring to look into Han Zhao's eyes. Under Hela's sharp gaze, he did not say a word, clenched his fists, and walked out of the room step by step. He was escorted out of the satellite division. After he left, Han Zhao's expression relaxed, and an inexplicable smile appeared on his face. I don't know if this idle chess piece will be of any use. Han Technician had other motives for letting Troy leave on purpose. As a main storyline NPC on one of the novice planets, Troy had a storyline on him. According to the development of his previous life, Troy had escaped death and narrowly escaped from being hunted down. Because he was wanted, he escaped into the border of the central galaxy and survived there. Later, he was absorbed into the Fallen Ark and became one of ES God's subordinates. He was not even considered an officer. However, because he was once a main storyline NPC on a novice planet, he was noticed by the players and recorded this information. An important NPC in the early stages became an ordinary character in the later stages and was treated as an Easter egg by the players. That was why Han Zhao remembered what happened to Troy. Therefore, before Han Zhao let Troy go, he secretly planted an eye on him. ES God was immune to the Observer's mark, and Troy had delivered himself to his doorstep. This gave Han Zhao an idea. If Troy joined the Fallen Ark as usual in the future, he would be able to monitor ES God's actions. Although he did not know if this move would work or when it would work, since it was a casual move, Han Zhao was just giving it a try. After all, he did not have any good methods to deal with ES God. If it worked, it would be worth it. If it did not, it would not be a loss either. 40 days passed in the blink of an eye. Han Zhao had been sitting on planet Gilman, waiting for the branch to recruit more people. During this time, he did not slack off and was expanding the Mech Legion every day. He also used his new ultimate knowledge to slowly transform mechanical lives. With Psionic Prime as the leader, the first-generation mechanical lives under his command had reached 3,000. It was not that he did not want to create a few more, but there were a few reasons. First, the cooldown of King's Mentor was a little long, measured in days. This was the prerequisite skill for using Tinder Awakening. Second, although Tinder Awakening could be used on a group of people, the upper limit of the group of people was not many. When the skill was maxed out, it could only be used on a dozen people at most. Furthermore, he realized that the mechanical lives that received the group skill were not as high as the mechanical lives that received the single target skill. The single target and group skill consumption was the same, but if it was shared among more targets, the energy received by a single target would be less. Third, if he used it too often, his kidneys would not be able to take it. This also solidified Han Zhao's idea of developing a mechanical civilization. Just using Tinder Awakening alone would not be very efficient in creating mechanical lives. His HP and MP regeneration was fast, but his stamina would need to rest to recover. A mechanical civilization would be able to generate soldiers on its own. Not only would it be efficient, but it would also save him time and effort. In these 40 days, the recruitment of the Planet Gilman branch finally came to an end. There were many beyond Grade A organizations in the Central Galaxy, and the Black Star Corps' appeal was not as high as in the Shattered Star Ring. The Planet Gilman branch only recruited a little more than 10 million new members, and the growth was slowing down. Compared to the beyond Grade A organizations in the Central Galaxy, this was considered small, and the branch had just started. Among them, there were more than 4 million new members, accounting for about 85% of the Constellation Corridor players. Through the Army benefits and word of mouth on the forums, most of the Constellation Corridor players rushed over from the surrounding star systems to join. Of these 4 million players, most of them chose to become members of the Army's mercenary department. There were two types of Army members. One was the backbone, following the Army's orders, and the other was half of the members, working for the Army but having their own freedom. Mercenaries were typical of the latter. The system of mercenaries was loose to begin with, and the Army's mercenary department did not go against the rules of the Galactic Mercenary Army. Most of the Constellation Corridor players only came for the benefits, and being mercenaries gave them more freedom. They worked for the Army in exchange for resources, and their relationship was simple. Han Xiao was not surprised by this. The players from the other star fields had not spent much time with the Army, and their relationship with the Army had to be nurtured slowly. He gave the Constellation Corridor players plenty of time to make their choice. Of the 4 million players, 700,000 accepted the Flickering World main storyline and applied to follow the Army to the Shattered Star Ring. Most of the 700,000 players were normal players, and some of them were from the club guilds. The remaining few million players decided to stay in the star field they were born in to continue exploring while observing the situation of these players. 700,000 leaks were dug out in the first batch, and Han Xiao was quite satisfied with this number. Today was the day of departure. An enormous Black Star Corps transport fleet was ready to depart. The 700,000 players had already boarded the ships. At this moment, the players from the various star fields were paying attention to the situation on this side through the forums. This was the first star field crossing, and every player was interested in it. It might be a reference for them to cross star fields in the future. Therefore, this became the most watched operation of the Black Star Corps in history, and its popularity among the players broke the previous record. On the transport ships, the players were whispering to each other excitedly. I wonder what it feels like to cross star fields. What's the difference between it and a normal Stargate? I'm still a little reluctant to leave. I wonder when I'll be able to return. Will the players of the Shattered Star Ring bully us? Do you guys think something fun will happen if we jump out of the spaceship while crossing star fields? Guard, it's this guy. In the command room of the main ship, Hela stood against the wall with her arms crossed. Aurora sat in the main pilot's seat, and Fu Ding watched from the side with his head lowered. Hardaway sat on the sofa with a blue crystal wine bottle in his hand. He swirled the mercury-colored wine in the bottle and poured it into his mouth. His face was red from the choking. There was a weighing game on the table, and the rule was that whoever lost would drink. There was a pile of empty bottles by his feet, and old man Aesop was sitting in the opponent's seat. He had a helpless expression on his face, as if he suspected that you just wanted to drink. Im stood in front of the window with her hands behind her back and sized up the fleet around her. She had Han Xiao, Hela, Aesop, and the others who were close to her to accompany her for the past month or so. She had spent her vacation there quite comfortably. Han Xiao stood in front of the star map. The target location had been set long ago, and when everyone had boarded the ship, he immediately gave the order to the fleet. Let's go. Rumble. The thrusters spewed out flames, and the battleships took off. We're finally going. The players on the ship were energized, and the countless people who were paying attention on the forums also had their eyes wide open. The fleet slowly left the planet Gilman division and began to accelerate, carrying the 700,000 uprooted leaks toward the Shattered Star Ring. Chapter 806 Shattered Star Ring, Red Empire Military Stargate Station. The Black Star Corps transport ships sailed out of the blue vortex like Stargate one after another. The blue space energy around the shields of the ships quickly dissipated like mist. We're back. In the command room of the main ship, Han Xiao heaved a sigh of relief. Although the central galaxy was prosperous and stable, the shadow of a universal civilization loomed over the star field like a mountain, giving him an invisible pressure. Although the Shattered Star Ring was remote and chaotic, he had stayed there for more than 20 years. This was the headquarters of the army, and it gave him a sense of security. Ames walked to his side, looked at the universe outside the porthole, and said, "I've been quite happy traveling with you guys for the past 2 months. Since we're home, I'll take my leave first. What's the rush? Come with us. Floating Dragon has drifted to another star cluster recently. We're on a different path." Hearing that, Han Xiao could only nod. "All right, I'll get someone to give you a spaceship. By the way, the preparations on the Dynasty's side are almost done. I'll set off soon and lead the army to explore the flickering world. Do you want to come? We should encounter many interesting things." Ames waved her hands. "That's the Red Empire's mission. I won't be going with you." Aesop stroked his beard and interrupted. "Yesterday, I had a new prophecy. It's related to the flickering world." "Another prophecy?" Han Zhao's eyes sparkled, and he curiously asked, "Old man, did you help me with the prophecy again?" Let me make it clear first. I didn't help you on purpose. Anyone who's close to me will have some kind of fate entanglement with me. My ability can randomly sense some things that these people might encounter in the future. It's like a dream, very vague. It's basically just a premonition. Yesterday, I sensed something about your exploration of the flickering world and had an intuition. At this point, Aesop paused, and his tone became solemn. "You'd better be careful of the Arcane Church." Arcane Church? Are they unwilling to give up and want to snatch back the evolution cube? This seems to be the only possibility. Han Xiao blinked. Seeing that Aesop did not continue, he could not help but ask, "Just this reminder? Don't you have any useful information like time and place?" Aesop spread out his hands. "It's so far in the future, and the situation can change at any time. How can I have an accurate prediction? I just have this intuition and nothing else." "Got it. I'll keep an eye on the star pupil Protoss. If the Arcane Church wants to deal with me, Cisco won't stay idle." Han Xiao nodded and patted Aesop's arm. "All right, there's one more thing." Aesop scratched his beard and said, "I heard that some of the ancients are secretly looking for information about you. A few of them seem to be interested in you." Han Xiaoxin glanced at Aesop from top to bottom and asked doubtfully, "Where did you hear that? After all, I was once one of them. Is it strange to have a few friends?" Aesop clicked his tongue, shrugged, and said, "I followed you to the dynasty's capital and appeared in front of the dynasty's allies. Raven Loudy shared my information with the other ancients. Now, those guys all know that I, a former member, am following you in Ames. Some of my friends contacted me." Hearing this, Han Xiaoxin could not help but sigh. An old man like Aesop had unfathomable experience and connections. He could always obtain information that ordinary people could not. Having an old man at home was like having a treasure. Who is the one asking about me? The Mecha Empire, Sun Hunter, Void Overlord. Aesop's tone suddenly sank, and he whispered, "In Thousand Shadows." Other than the Mecha Empire, Han Xiao had not interacted with any of the ancients before. Sun Hunter was a cannon master, and Void Overlord was a void creature. He did not know why they were asking about him, but when Aesop mentioned Thousand Shadows, Han Zhao's eyes immediately narrowed. The Shadow Warrior, who interrogated Thousand Shadows, was helped by Aesop. Aesop also knew that Thousand Shadows had once plotted against him, So he took the initiative to mention this as a reminder. Maybe he still wants to deal with me. He's in the Radiant Federation Star Sector, so I can't do anything to him for now. I'll deal with him in the future. Han Zhao's expression did not change, and he kept this in mind. There had been no news from the prey mission. He did not know if Thousand Shadows had given up on dealing with him, but now it seemed that this guy was still harboring evil intentions. However, his strength was not what it used to be, and Thousand Shadows would not be able to deal with him easily. At this time, Im suddenly said softly, "Black Star, I've been thinking about something recently, and I want to discuss it with you." Han Xiao turned to look at Ames and saw a hint of hesitation on her face. This was rare for Ames, so he could not help but ask out of curiosity, "What do you want to discuss with me? Do you want to borrow money? Is 50 million anas enough? Who wants to borrow money from you? Do you think I'm very poor?" Ames' eyebrows trembled slightly. "Actually, I've been thinking about the development plan of Floating Dragon recently." Han Zhao's and Aesop's eyes widened, and their faces were filled with shock. "You've changed? Is this something you should be thinking about? Am I that unreliable in your heart?" Ames was helpless. "I'm the leader of Floating Dragon. What's so strange about worrying about my organization occasionally? It wouldn't be a problem if it was someone else, but for you, it's really strange. Who doesn't know how lazy you are, cough? How indifferent you are?" Han Xiao hurriedly changed his words to hide his smile. Ames had been a boss for so many years, guarding Floating Dragon and living her life as an otaku. She had never thought about developing a faction, and her image as a lazy person had long been ingrained in everyone's heart. Who knew why she suddenly had such a thought? "Stop joking around. I'm serious this time." Ames glanced around and glared at Han Xiao. She had never been very passionate about developing her organization, but after such a long time, she had also started to think about doing something. In the past 10 years, she had personally seen Han Xiao lead the Black Star Corps step by step. With such a role model, she had developed some interest in developing her organization. She wanted to imitate Han Xiao and run Floating Dragon better. This had nothing to do with ambition. Ames mainly saw it as fun. After being lazy for so long, she had to find something to do. However, Ames would not admit to Han Xiao that her interest was piqued by Han Zhao's deeds. "All right, I'll take it as true." Seeing Ames' unfriendly gaze, Han Xiao held back his laughter and waved his hands. "Let's not laugh anymore. Let's talk about serious matters. What do you want to discuss with me about developing Floating Dragon?" Ames was silent for a while before slowly saying, "Floating Dragon has been drifting in the universe for a long time, and I want to find a place to stay." Han Xiao thought for a while before nodding. "Oh, this idea is pretty good. Having a fixed base will make it easier for people to have confidence in Floating Dragon. As a Beyond Grade A, you have extraordinary appeal. As long as you change the impression the supers in the Shattered Star Ring have of you and show that you're serious about expanding, there will definitely be hundreds of times more people willing to work for you." Han Xiao stroked his chin, sized Ames up, and joked, "Furthermore, you're so pretty. Your appeal is probably even stronger than mine." Hearing this, Ames' expression became strange. She stared at Han Xiao and said with a surprised tone, "You're pretty. So you think I'm pretty? What's so strange about that?" Han Xiao was confused. He did not know why Ames had such a huge reaction. Shaking his head, Han Xiao returned to the topic and asked, "Have you chosen the location where Floating Dragon will stay?" "This is what I want to discuss with you." Ames calmed herself down, seemingly hesitating for half a second before slowly saying, "I'm planning to let Floating Dragon stay in Blue Star for a long time. What do you think?" Han Xiao was stunned. "Can I?" Ames raised her brows and said with a smile that was not a smile, "More than 10 years ago, your mother planet suffered a disaster, and you announced through the galactic media that Blue Star was a planet that Floating Dragon had set their eyes on. With Floating Dragon's name, Blue Star has received a large amount of investment from financial groups over the years and has developed quite well. Even the God Aura civilization has allowed Floating Dragon to control Blue Star. You're not going back on your words, are you?" Han Xiao shook his head helplessly. Back then, the Black Star Mercenary was only a small organization and did not split from Floating Dragon. Relying on Floating Dragon's name, Blue Star had the opportunity to develop quickly and step into the galaxy. After the split, the Black Star Corps took over the management of Blue Star. Floating Dragon did not ask about it, so he thought that Ames did not care. He did not expect her to suddenly bring it up. Since Blue Star is a planet that Floating Dragon is in charge of in name. Ames smiled. Han Zhao's pained expression made her happy. She chuckled and said, "Then it's perfectly justifiable for Floating Dragon to choose Blue Star as the location of our headquarters. Are you going to chase my people away from my mother planet?" Han Zhao was surprised. Blue Star was the foundation that had supported him to obtain a seat in the Shattered Star Ring Civilization Conference. There was no way he would give it to someone else. "Am I such a terrible person in your eyes?" Ames said with annoyance. "Don't worry. I'll stay outside the planet's atmosphere, just like your army headquarters. I won't interfere with Blue Star's governance. Aren't I discussing this with you?" Han Zhao's eyes flickered. If that was the case, not only would it not be a bad thing, it would be a great thing. The army headquarters had been stationed on planet Golden Gate for so many years, and it had brought unparalleled development opportunities to planet Golden Gate. Its economy and security had greatly improved, and it had become a prosperous colonial planet in Godora. If Ames did that, Blue Star's development speed would soar once again, and they would indirectly obtain more resources. Furthermore, with a beyond grade A like Ames as their neighbor, Blue Star's safety would be greatly increased, and they would have less to worry about. Han Zhao understood what Ames was thinking. Choosing Blue Star as Floating Dragon's headquarters was not just a legitimate reason. He sighed and said, "It seems like I'll have to owe you a favor again. It's good that you know. You're lucky." Ames' eyes curved. "I promise you, when the time comes, I'll get the Blue Star Corps to cooperate with you. As for the details, I'll get Sylvia and the others to handle it. Then I'll get Jenny to handle it for me." Speaking of Jenny, Han Zhao suddenly thought of something. "By the way, did you inform Jenny about this beforehand?" "No." Hearing this, the two of them stared at each other and remained silent for a long time. "Then, isn't this just a spur-of-the-moment idea?" Han Zhao complained in his mind. He had thought that Ames had really thought about it carefully. Indeed, this was her style of doing things. "Cough. Since we're done, I'll take my leave." Ames covered her mouth with her fist and coughed twice to hide her awkwardness. She then turned around and left. Han Zhao watched as Ames and Aesop boarded the small spaceship and left the fleet, turning into a stream of light and disappearing from his sight. Only then did he order the fleet to continue forward and return to the army headquarters. The crossing of starfields was completed, and Han Zhao opened the forums to look at the reactions of the players. They had just passed through the Stargate, and the more than 700,000 players in the fleet did not have any special reactions. Instead, the players of the Shattered Star Ring had a bigger reaction. It was because the players of the other star fields had come to their territory and could not wait to interact with them. The first instance of players crossing star fields was extremely meaningful. The players of the various star fields all recorded this moment in their own Chronicles posts. Galaxy Calendar, Year 705, March 18th. Led by the Black Star Corps, 700,000 players left the Constellation Corridor and arrived at the Shattered Star Ring. This is the first successful crossing of star fields in the entire galaxy. The recruitment of players in the Constellation Corridor this time went very smoothly. Han Zhao knew the reason very well, because there were not many factions that the players could choose in version 3.0, and he understood the needs of the players. The Black Star Corps was the best faction at this stage and was even more attractive. Even if the players chose it as a transition faction, it would still be the first choice. As the players' levels increased, there would be more and more powerful factions to choose from, such as the 3 universal civilizations and the supercluster civilizations. By then, it would not be so easy for the army to recruit players. This was inevitable. For the sake of a new experience, there would always be people who would try out a new faction. Han Zhao had been tirelessly expanding the army and increasing the competitiveness of his faction. This was also to prepare for a rainy day. From a certain perspective, using the remote and chaotic Shattered Star Ring as his base was actually a good thing, as there would be fewer direct competitors. After more than 10 days of travel, the fleet finally returned to the Army headquarters. Millions of Shattered Star Ring players were gathered at the Army headquarters, looking forward to interacting with the players from the Constellation Corridor. Most of them were just there to watch the show. The more than 700,000 Constellation Corridor players in the fleet looked at the satellite base of the Army headquarters through the porthole. Their excitement was like a feather that tickled their hearts. After staying on the ship for so many days with anticipation, they had finally arrived. Chapter 807. Transport spaceships landed one after another at the headquarters spaceport. More than 700,000 Constellation Corridor players stepped onto the ground at the headquarters, and millions of Army players ran over to watch. From the spaceport to the main hall, it was packed with people. Luckily, the satellite base of the Army headquarters was large enough to accommodate hundreds of millions of members. This was the first time that players from different star fields met outside of the pro scene. Be it the Chinese players, Russian players, or Australian players, they were all international friends in each other's eyes. It was inevitable for them to size each other up. Comparing the two sides, there was a clear difference between them. More than 700,000 Constellation Corridor players were equipped with equipment of all sorts of colors and designs, making them look rather messy. As for the millions of Army players, their armor and weapons were mainly black and silver. Although there were many designs, they were not as messy as the 700,000 foreign players. Most of the Army players knew what they were doing, and after practical experience, they basically used the Army combat armor that was publicly recognized as the best. They looked like an elite army, giving off a sense of uniformity, and the slight differences in individual equipment were not so obvious. Furthermore, the insignia of the Black Star Corps was engraved on all their equipment, looking like the difference between a real army and a ragtag army. After disembarking, some of the 700,000 newcomers took the initiative to greet and interact with each other. Some curiously observed the headquarters and headed to the various functional areas, and some went to interact with the Army NPCs. The huge crowd dispersed and entered the headquarters to familiarize themselves with the environment. Ordinary players all had their own ways of doing things. Vodka and Captain Old Henry brought a few Russian and Australian guild leaders to look for the leaders of the Chinese guilds. In the guild base rented by the Long Sky Club in the headquarters of the Black Star Corps, Sky Territory's guild leader Jay Green Sky and Eternal Dynasty's guild leader Morning Snow Twilight Frost represented the two giant guilds and received the few Russian guild leaders. Friend from China, it's a pleasure to meet all of you. I'm the Vice President of Strength and Glory, Vodka. Vodka and his companions introduced themselves one after another. It's a pleasure to have friends from afar, Jay Greensky said with a smile, and the translation function conveyed his meaning to Vodka and the others. After chatting for a while, Vodka finally got down to business. The higher-ups have asked us to establish a branch guild across the star field. Some time ago, we've already negotiated with the clubs on both sides. The higher-ups said that you two big clubs will provide us with some help in the beginning. Morning Snow Twilight Frost chuckled. That's right. Pardon me for asking, but how many guild members did you bring to manage the branch guild? Vodka said, I brought 12 core members, 150 official members, and 1,200 external members. The representatives of the other guilds also said the same thing, and each of them had around 1,000 players. In the official guild of a large professional club, the core members and official members had a proper job and were paid to play the game. As for the peripheral players, some of them were voluntary players and some of them were workshop players. They could also get bonuses from the club. The few thousand of you running the branch guild here are going through a lot of hardships. Everything has to start from scratch. Buying all kinds of tools, items, and vehicles requires money. Repairing, strengthening, and updating equipment is the same. There's also the cost of building the guild base, going out to do missions, and so on. Furthermore, you have to find experience, materials, money, and other channels that can generate stable income. The sooner you turn your losses into profits, the better, right? Vodka and the others nodded. To them, running a guild was a job, and they were here to take on missions. If the branch guild was run well, it would be a result for them. Morning Snow, Twilight Frost, and Jade Green Sky looked at each other secretly, smiled, and said slowly, "We've been through a lot recently. Some time ago, we completed the main storyline mission of the Black Star Army, Secret War. Many of us obtained the title of Secret Warrior. With this honor, we can enjoy a 10% discount on all our purchases in the Army. Of course, you guys will not receive such treatment. Only the Army players who participated in the Secret War had such benefits. This was a title that Han Shao had released, and the players who joined later had no chance to get it. These cross-star field guilds had already found out about this situation through the forums. It was impossible for them not to be envious. You're saying, yes, we can provide you guys with discount channels. We can buy the Army's products at a 10% discount, and you guys can buy them at a 70% discount from the two of us. Big families like us have enough funds and contribution points to satisfy your needs for bulk purchases. Of course, you can also find normal players and give them the money to buy for you. But there's always the risk of being cheated." Vodka did not comment. Dynasty and Long Sky were clearly trying to profit from the difference. As the manager of the branch, he had to be careful with his calculations. Compared to purchasing resources from the Chinese clubs, he was more inclined to find reliable, normal Chinese players to work with and borrow the authority to buy at a 10% discount. At most, he would share some of his resources with the players he worked with. No matter what, it was better than a 70% discount. However, Morning Snow, Twilight Frost saw through the thoughts of the few Russian guild representatives and smiled. "If you guys buy from us, we'll help you in other ways." "In what ways?" "For example, some high-quality mission resources, some hidden information from NPCs. If you guys accept some high-difficulty missions, we can provide manpower to help. Also, we can guarantee your safety." "Safety?" Vodka's expression changed. "What do you mean?" "The Shattered Star Ring is the territory of the Chinese clubs since a few versions ago," Morning Snow, Twilight Frost said. "Dozens of large guilds and countless small and medium-sized guilds have shared many high-quality resources here. As outsiders, you guys came to our territory to operate a branch. I can't guarantee that the other guilds won't have conflicts with you. Furthermore, you guys are just a branch that came from afar and have limited manpower. If a guild war breaks out, you guys will be at a disadvantage." One of the business goals of the club guilds was to provide resources and support for the professional players of the club teams, and the large guilds of the various countries were each other's biggest competitors. The Chinese clubs could not sit still and watch the other professional clubs operate their branches in their territory. The upper echelons had given the order for the guilds under them to think of ways to restrict the development of their competitors. Even if the club guilds of other countries were rich and powerful, if someone kept destroying their quests, stealing their resource points, and hunting down their members, they would not be able to develop. They would always be in a state of loss and would not be able to achieve anything. Morning Snow, Twilight Frost's words were to remind Vodka and the others that if they did not pay some protection fee, the first and second tier clubs would find trouble with them. Of course, the Chinese clubs did not go overboard. After all, the players of the various countries were paying attention to the situation of the first batch of players to cross the star field. As the masters, they could not openly bully a group of outsiders without any foundation. Even if they were competitors, they had to take into account the recent attention. They did not want the Chinese professional circle to leave a bad impression on the other countries, so they still gave a little discount so that the foreign clubs would not lose out on the surface. Normal players would naturally not be targeted, but the clubs of the various countries were first and foremost business groups. In order to operate better, they had to rely on the glory of the professional players. While earning money, they also had to shoulder the expectations of the players. The professional players competed in the arena, and the official guilds had to compete in the game. If the Chinese clubs opened branches in other star fields, the situation would be similar. They would be suppressed everywhere. Vodka and the others looked at each other and helplessly agreed. However, they would not give in so easily. They secretly decided to find a chance to work with normal players in the future to hide it from the Chinese clubs and pay less protection fees. On the other side, in the guild base of the Temple of God Club, the guild presidents of the other two clubs, Jupiter and Cowherd, were meeting with the Kangaroo Boxing branch president, Captain Old Henry, and the other Australian guild representatives. They were discussing the same thing as Long Sky and Dynasty. The four biggest clubs had already privately formed a united front. Compared to their plan, this protection fee was just a small benefit. To the 700,000 newcomers, the Army headquarters was their new main city. While they were familiarizing themselves with the environment, Han Shao returned to the Army commander's office. The officers who had stayed in the headquarters for 2 months were waiting to report to him. Han Shao leaned on the chair, looked at Sylvia, Haluz, Reynolds, and the other officers, and raised his chin. "How's the Army doing while I was away?" Sylvia stepped forward. "During this time, we digested the gains from the previous expansion and have successfully connected with the business channels of many allies in the Shattered Star Ring. Now, the Black Star Corps' business scope covers more than 10 industries, forming a complete trading system, intelligence system, transportation system, and so on. The logistics department has added 126 machinery workshops and factories in various places," Reynolds said with a deep voice. "We're rushing to build more satellite bases. According to the Army's blueprint, we'll place more branches in the 7-star clusters and expand our sphere of influence." Haluz nodded. "Because of the increase in the number of members and the expansion of our organization, the Army's fleet is also expanding. There's a lot of work in the logistics department, so we've placed orders with the financial groups and civilizations we're working with. Batches of new battleships are produced every day." Han Shao nodded. This was what he had instructed before he left. "Apart from this, is there anything else?" Sylvia was a little embarrassed. We don't have enough funds," Han Shao glared at her. "There's so many businesses, including the mining rights of many resource planets that the civilizations have shared with us. How can we lack funds? The cost of expansion is too high. The Army's current maintenance fees are extremely high, and the logistics department is operating at full capacity to increase production. The expenditure of funds is terrifying. Furthermore, it's the off-season for the trade, and the sales of many financial groups we're working with have decreased. This has extended the profit period of mining resource planets, causing our funds to be a little tight. Didn't you find the people from the Red Empire and Amethyst Civilization and ask them for funds? Didn't I say that we can look for them if we lack funds?" Han Shao was surprised. "I did." Sylvia was helpless. "They didn't reject me. They only said that they'll only give us the funds after you personally say so." "All right, I'll contact them later." Han Zhao's mouth twitched. These two civilizations only recognized him as their ally. There was nothing he could do. Although the army was huge, the true core was still him. "One more thing. You asked me to gather the troops to explore the flickering world. I've already prepared them. They're split into many fleets and are on standby at the various subbases in Colton. They're ready to depart at any time." "We're just waiting for your orders," Sylvia said. "Not bad. Zoel will probably rush me to depart soon. There's no delay." Han Shao looked at Sylvia with admiration. The three of them reported some more details. Seeing that Han Shao did not have any other orders, they all relaxed and started chatting. "Why don't I see Lagi? I'm back, but as the vice captain, he didn't come to see me. What's he busy with every day?" Han Shao was curious. He's really busy every day. If he's not busy playing cards, he's busy sleeping." Sylvia became angry at the mention of Lagi. She then turned around and glared at Haluz. "And you, he dragged you to play cards every day, and you didn't reject him? What do you know about the fun of playing cards?" Haluz snorted. "Don't mention playing cards in front of me," Han Shao said with annoyance. "Let me ask you, how's Lagi teaching Tamar?" Tamar was a main character that he had poached back, and Han Shao did not forget about him. "I heard that he's learning very quickly." Han Shao nodded and looked at Reynolds. With an expectant tone, he asked, "What about my godson? Did he show any special talent in machinery?" No," Reynolds said honestly. "However, he's also learning very quickly. He's talented in the path of machinery. Sigh, I wonder if this will be able to steal perfect mechanical sense." Han Xiao helplessly waved his hands. I'll bring him out for a walk in a few days. You guys can leave first. The three of them nodded and left the room. Han Xiao took out his communicator and contacted the Amethyst Civilization and the Red Empire, successfully getting them to lend him the money. Zoel also reminded him that the Red Empire's development team had been completed, and he told Han Xiao to head to the Dawnstar cluster in the Flickering World to meet up with the Dynasty's troops. At that time, they would officially begin exploring the Flickering World. After dealing with the backlog of miscellaneous matters, Han Xiao observed the movement of the 700,000 new players in the army headquarters. These players from the Constellation Corridor were still familiarizing themselves with the map of the headquarters, and he noticed a phenomenon. Although these 700,000 players had crossed over to another star field, they were still used to posting on the Constellation Corridor board. Although the players from both sides communicated quite a lot on the forums, only a small portion of the players interacted with each other in the army headquarters. Although they had all become members of the army, there was still a clear difference between the players of the two-star fields. It cannot be said that there was a clear divide between them, but they were still playing their own game. This won't do. Upon seeing this, Han Xiao could not help but shake his head. This was like a blind date. When both sides met, one would not speak, and the other would not speak. They would just sit there and stare at each other. He thought about it, and quickly wrote 2 faction missions. Through the faction interface, he released them to all the players in the army. Only the players could receive them. Instructing recruits, repeatable, mission introduction. Recently, the Black Star Corps has expanded again, bringing back new warriors from other star fields. The veteran members of the army can choose to instruct the new recruits and help them familiarize themselves with the army's work. Mission requirements. Team up with a new warrior player from another star field and complete any one of the army missions. Reward: 100 to 300 Black Star Corps contribution points. Remarks: this mission can only be accepted by players who have been in the army for more than 1 year. Instructing veterans. Repeatable. Mission introduction. As a new recruit to the Black Star Corps, veterans are the best people to learn from. Go ask them and let them help you understand the situation of the army. Mission requirements. Team up with a veteran warrior of the Black Star Corps, player who has been in the army for more than 1 year, and complete any one of the army missions. Reward: 100 to 300 Black Star Corps contribution points. Remarks: this mission can only be accepted by players who have been in the army for less than 1 year. Looking at the 2 missions that were released, Han Xiao laughed slyly. After running the army for 3 versions, the army's contribution points had long become a key resource that was no less important than Anus. No one would complain about having too much. He did not want the players from the 2-star fields to form different groups. Those club guilds were competing for business, so there was no other way. However, normal players were different. They did not have so many benefits. He had been advocating internationalization for many years. Since they had come to his base camp, they were all leaks. He needed these new recruits and veterans to interact on a large scale and have fun together. Social interaction was an extremely important part of the player's experience. Since the players from both sides were so reserved and did not take the initiative to communicate with their international friends, Han Xiao would seduce them into socializing. This way, it would be beneficial for the Constellation Corridor players to integrate into the army system. Not only would they be able to get used to the new environment earlier, but they would also be able to slowly remove the label of Constellation Corridor from these people and change their mentality to army players. This way, the interpersonal relationships between the players would become another reason for them to stay in the army. He would use the players to attract the players, indirectly increasing the attractiveness and sense of identity of the faction. Han Xiao suddenly slapped his forehead, and a strange expression appeared on his face. Why does it feel like a pimp? You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.